All right, we'll now convene the Minturn Town Council regular meeting for Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. Roll call, please.
Kate here.
Brian here. Gusty here. Eric here.
And Earl is here. Would we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Do we have anyone wanting to pull anything? Hearing none.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Eric seconds.
Motion by Gusty, second by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next we have the regular agenda. Any additions, deletions?
No, sir.
Take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular agenda.
Kate seconds.
Motion by Eric, second by Kate. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. And now we have public comment. Do we have anyone here who wants to address council on anything but what's on the agenda? Please step forward. Go ahead, Kyle. State your name and address, please.
My name is Kyle Fowler. You say address?
Yeah.
I have a restaurant, 455 Main Street, the Crazy Chicken. And I would like to potentially have the laws changed regarding the golf cart to allow what was originally an 8-person golf cart. It's now a 6-person golf cart due to insurance setbacks. But I would like that added to the agenda for the future to see if that's a feasible
So
thing.
you want to
for
discuss the licensing process and all for golf carts? Is that what you're after?
So the rules regarding golf carts currently are max capacity is 4 people, max weight is 1,300 pounds. This one is 3,200 pounds unmanned, and
3,200-pound golf cart?
they just redid the roads. It should be okay. Yeah, but it was originally an 8-person with 2 rear-facing seats, which I already took out. So it's now a 6-person. So it's maybe 3,150 pounds now. But I'd like to see if there is any potential for that to be allowable. It took me longer than I expected to get it insured, but it is fully insured now. And the plane has kind of evolved due to the fact that I can't, go down Main Street. The original plan was to take it to pick up people at the bottom of the Minturn Mile and just make that end of Main Street more accessible for everybody. I mean, they don't have to come to my restaurant. We'll take them to Kirby's or as far as the road will allow. But it's now kind of a situation of like, I want to test it out for a little bit and go as far as like Toledo or to this end of Eagle Street, because that's a one-way, and unless I can afford a company to widen Eagle Street to make it 2-way.
So access to Main Street, I believe the rules say you can cross it, but you can't be on Main Street. That's
Correct, yeah. So
we can't change that.
So at this point, yeah, I really want to just see if it's possible, and even if I just can go to Toledo, and back. I mean, it's a long walk from the mile down to my restaurant, and people do it all the time in their ski boots. So I thought this would be a good idea for the town. And I realize, you know, the state highway is whole different situation. But yeah, I at least want to get it on the agenda and get it in the,
Well, you could kind of see if the consignment store, Holy Toledo, would let you scoot around the edge of their
through that little,
get down.
I didn't consider, I can barely walk through that path. It's a big golf cart.
I
But,
fit ours. A standard golf cart fits through that.
They allow it?
In summer.
Never mind, don't answer that.
We were just following.
Yeah, I at least would like it to be on the agenda for future, you know.
And
talking
I'm
to
happy
legal.
to help clarify. So Kyle bought a golf cart that does not meet Minturn standards per our golf cart ordinance. We currently have weight and we have a golf cart ordinance, Kate, and it has standards. Within those standards are seating limitations and weight limitations. But we really need to dive deeper. When we did the original golf cart ordinance, I can't say that there's rhyme or reason for a lot of it, and it's probably worth a conversation. Additionally, I can currently say that the golf cart mafia that we have in town, I just called them that.
They're busy tonight.
Yeah, they all use Eagle Street going the wrong way down the one-way, as do our snowmobilers. It is not enforced by the town. I can say since I've been here in 2009, we've never enforced going the wrong way in a snowmobile or a golf cart so that there is access to the northern end of town via Eagle Street, going the wrong way, crossing Bellum Bridge, getting to Saloon, and then Minturn Mile. So Kyle came to us asking Cindy to get a golf cart license. Cindy notified him that he did not meet the current standards, but however, staff could help him through the process of coming to the town council, asking to be put on a future agenda to discuss potentially modifying the requirements for golf cart licensing.
Sounds pretty
Should I
simple.
sum that up?
Yeah. So y'all okay with putting it on the
Yeah.
future agenda items? Okay. We'll put it on future agenda item, and it'll take a while for us to map out when that would be, but we'll try to put it up as much front as we can.
Awesome. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And if there's anything else I can do,
Yeah,
or
if anything,
weight
I
I
just
can
wanna
take
see
off
what-
of the golf cart.
I just want to see what a 3,200-pound golf cart, how that rides.
You want to go for a ride?
I would, but I'm a little busy right now.
Sweet. Thank you
Okay.
guys so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Keep
you.
bugging me on that, Kyle.
I will.
All right. Anyone else? Terry?
Terry Armistead.
Armistead's, plural.
Oh, yay, they're all here. 1632 South Main Street. I was going to bring my guitar and I was going to sing a song because I was thinking I was going to write a song for you. Michelle, I'm not going to cry, but on your last night of council. Michelle, the Minturn Bell. I wish I wasn't here singing the praises of Michelle's work as our town manager, and before that as economic development coordinator. I wish we had our heads down, chipping away at the many issues the town faces. But here we are. I liken Michelle's era as a renaissance of sorts. Minturn seemed to be spinning its wheels as governments can. Michelle stepped in and brought an optimistic outlook to the town. The council reflected that positivity right back. For the first time in a long, forever time, grants were pursued, fun things began to happen, and the not so fun things became fun. Michelle organized and created processes and cultivated the staff that was here into the team they are today. And I think they would probably agree. It's been really fun following you. She's like the Pied Piper. And I think we would all follow her to Uray if they didn't have a river that you couldn't fish in. But we are going to miss you. I mean, my kids have reaped the benefits of sidewalks and bike parks and a new water treatment plant and well, they're going to be, and all the wonderful things you have done for this town for generations to come. So I just wanted to recognize you today. And I'm sad you're leaving, but yeah, you've been amazing.
I second that, obviously. I can't top that. But I do want to say that Terry did also give a yay on the consent agenda, as if she was still on the council.
I don't know when you're in.
Used to it.
She's okay.
Fell right back in.
She did.
Some empty
Yeah.
seats.
I said aye.
She said aye.
Yeah.
We miss you. Thank you.
Anyone else want to address the council? Okay. Moving on, we have council comments and committee reports.
Nothing.
Anybody got anything?
I mean, aside from what Terry just said, which I think we all feel.
Yeah. Ditto across the board, okay? If we keep going, she's gonna start on it.
Yeah, we all are. Let's be honest.
Okay.
Friday.
Okay, thank you.
Attended High Five Media board meeting last week. We talked about the revenues. They depend on a lot of revenues from donations, and Colorado Gifts Day is a big donation time. I think it was like 7,000 they received, but just everybody to remember that next year when it comes time to give. One neat thing that they're doing is teaching a course at CMC. Looks like they had about 10 people that were signed up for it. Everybody seemed pretty interested in how to do video and media. I might try to get down there tomorrow. They're wanting board members to show up to one of the courses just to show their support. So I'm going to try to get there for the one tomorrow. But that's about all I have. I want to thank High Five for what all they do and offer their service for us.
Thank you, Justin. Eric?
Ditto. We're gonna miss you, Jill. We're gonna miss Michelle.
I'm not gonna miss her. I don't know. Okay, Jay and I went to the CML meeting, or was that CAST? CAST meeting, yeah. Been to so many meetings lately. Just wanted to give a quick report on that. There was concern about the federal funding freeze, and it's sent a lot of people back, even though it's been turned away. It delays a lot of things for governments throughout our state. John is their head staff guy in Colorado for Senator Bennett. And he was there, and he said that while he can't absolutely guarantee that the funds that we have that would have been frozen won't be frozen, he was very optimistic that it would still be Minterms. I'm talking about the congressionally directed spending. That's the $3 million we have for the water system. So I think everyone was feeling a little bit better after those discussions, and then also me and some local leaders met with Joe Neguse, Congressman Neguse, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I want to let you know that the U.S. Forest Service program that has been on hold and tied up in Congress for 2 years, and this is the affordable housing program. And the basic of it is it got approved by Congress and signed off on. And the deal is administrative sites within a municipality or within a jurisdiction are available to have a 100-year lease on that land, and it would make it available for affordable housing. But also, it would, and the only cost to whoever is putting in the housing, the only cost is housing the Forest Service staff in that area. So it's a really good deal. We will be the Forest Service is very, very slow. This is a few years down the road, probably. But I do want to make sure that we get the word out to everybody. We'll maybe have some open houses about it once we get deeper into this thing. But we probably won't even start looking into it until we can meet with Scott Fitzwilliams, and who's head of the White River National Forest. So that's another future thing that we can look forward to. And that's all I got. Next we have staff reports. I think we have a manager who does that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will keep mine very brief. My update is in the packet. I will say, however,
that we have recently started the Eagle River quiet title process to secure the section of the Eagle River that was remediated as part of the early 2000s cleanup of the Superfund site when it overflowed. We have received some feedbacks from some property owners along the river asking to be a part of this discussion and considering alternatives from the town quiet titling the river. Scott Hahn and Kevin Rindy will be coming back to the council the first meeting in March to discuss the 30-foot river setback from the Markel's request at a prior council meeting. And if the council should be so interested, we can add the Eagle River quiet title effort to that discussion to see if the council is still amenable to moving forward with the Eagle River quiet title effort, or if they would like to take alternative routes. If that's the case and the council is willing to have that conversation, we can pause the Eagle River quiet title effort until that time.
And she's asking for direction. I am for absolutely moving forward. Is anybody, okay, Brian?
I did have a couple people text me when they got the letters, and there's not like a ton of information on the website or any, it seemed like there was just some confusion. Like I think one of the comments I got is, what is this? So, I think any more info that we can get out to help explain that would be helpful for.
Okay.
But I think we should talk about it.
Okay,
I think I'm in favor of moving forward.
okay. Yeah, and there's some confusion about what we're doing, but the quiet titling of the riverbed is what we're doing. And we've been trying to get it because, and everybody's saying, well, why do we have to do that? Well, there's some property owners on the Eagle River that have quiet titled the riverbed. And that's going to create a confusion about who can walk where in the, if you're fishing, fly fishing on the river. Oh, you can't go down this stretch of the stream because it's a private property. So what we're trying to do is do a thorough outreach to everyone and to try to quiet title what has not already been quiet titled by individuals, and talk to those individuals about the community aspects of this, and maybe perhaps they'll come around and allow that to be a public area. So that's why we're doing it, and so I think we have direction from at least 4 of us that we want to move forward.
Okay, and we can certainly work to get more on the website as well. Additionally, I just want to throw out, because Brian has been tooting this horn for a while now, and an exciting day happened yesterday. CDOT approved Minturns permit request for a crosswalk and rapid flashing crossing signs at Little Beach Park intersection.
Take a golf cart
Baby steps.
The golf cart can cross Highway 24, can't utilize Highway 24.
I'll get close though.
And actually, since we have Terry in the room, Terry started this, I don't know, decades ago, I think. So it's been a very long time in the coming, but it was an exciting thing to have happen right at the end of May. Thank you.
Maybe not in this.
Okay, anything else for your report?
No, sir.
Okay. Scott, are you doing this one?
I am. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I too have a brief report in the packet. I did want to just touch real briefly on the Highlands parcels 1 and 2. The public outreach process, at least the first part of it, wrapped up last week. Thank you to everyone who attended the open house last Wednesday evening, council members, planning commission members, friends and neighbors. Saw some folks that don't even live in town who were here last night. We also had stakeholders from the U.S. Forest Service, CPW, Eagle County Open Space Department, and the Eagle Valley Land Trust. So the open house was a great success. I think we had at least 40 people show up to that. We also put out a survey. I know most of you took that, and I will be the first to admit I'm not an expert in writing survey questions, but hopefully we got the responses that we were looking for. We had a tremendous response. I think as of writing this memo last week, we had 231 responses to that. So my plan is to work with Madison and Cindy to summarize the feedback that we received and come back probably the next council meeting and present just a little bit more formal, here's what we heard, and break down the statistics. I think initially we probably received the feedback that I was expecting, which seems to be an overwhelming support for some type of open space preservation scenario for those two parcels. So I'll come back with more specifics, but that's the one thing I wanted to touch on tonight and see if anyone had any questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, I'm not sure how much, I know I've talked to a lot of people that want to lower their water bills instead of with revenue streams from that property. And I don't know if people understood that. I just want to make sure we're going to go by what the people are saying. I don't know if that got through, that we can, if we do the conservation easement or whatever, that will be a little bit more, it'll be some money, but it's not going to be nearly as much as, say, a ranch property lot. Okay.
I tried to be specific in the survey to say that it is assumed that either scenario, some kind of development or some kind of open space, will generate revenue. But I hesitate to speculate on what the difference might be.
I just want to make sure that we just make sure. I mean, if we want conservation, that's what we'll do. I just don't want people to be surprised saying, "Oh, I thought this was going to help pay down the increase in water rates."
Right.
And so I just don't want to get confused about that.
Well,
or people to be confused about that.
I do think it's early days.
Yes, it is.
There are many different variations on how this could play out that could achieve 100% of either one or somewhere in between. And I'd like to, I guess at the next meeting, talk a little bit more about what some of those options are and start establishing a process moving forward of how we're going to start figuring those things out and what next steps need to happen as far as either platting the properties, working with potential buyers, those types of things. Give you some alternatives to give staff direction.
Right. And there are some alternatives, so we'll keep working on it. It's early, so I just wanted to make sure that people understood that. Okay. Anything else? You want to discuss the code forward?
We're moving as fast as we can on our code update. I think we're making good progress. We've gotten through a few new chapters and we're about to head into our next module. I fully expect, and I'm really excited to start talking about zone districts, people's zoning and allowed uses and development standards, probably March into April. So we'll come back to you again with and make sure the public knows when those discussions are happening. I fully expect that we're going to have some open houses. And we've been working on administrative, pretty boring but very important parts of our new land use code up until this point. But the next part is very much we need public input. So keep you posted.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Any questions for Scott?
Just want to say thanks. I attended the open house. The turnout was excellent. So thank you. Thanks to everybody that was involved.
Yeah. Cindy did a lot of work helping us get the word out and getting the website set up. And so team effort as always.
Nice. Okay. Next thing on the agenda is special presentations. And while it doesn't say we've got anything here, we do.
Oh, Jeff.
And so, rumors out that we're losing our town manager. And so we're going to take a recess right now and have some cake. And I'm sorry we don't have any vodka for you. But anyway, I would
got a
like
guy.
to recess. You bring it up.
Not yet.
So good.
That's something.
Yeah.
They have long.
Kyle, it's nice to meet you. And Spence, yeah.
Okay, we'll reconvene our meeting. Move on to the next item on the agenda. We're in our business items now, and the first item is ordinance number 2, series 2025, second reading. An ordinance amending chapter 16 and article 17 of the Minturn Municipal Code in regards to the cutoff times for holiday lighting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am not aware of any changes to that ordinance between first and second readings, so I don't have any additions or revisions.
Okay. Any further discussion from the town, from the board? I'll open it up for public comment. Anyone wants to talk about, and please don't, about our holiday lighting code? Okay, hearing none. Oh, Sandy, do we have anybody in Zoom land?
We do have some folks on the Zoom. I believe most of these folks are here for the short-term rental discussion. I have one person, Charlene. I'm not sure who that is.
So nobody's got a hand raised on this issue?
Nobody has their hand raised on this issue, so I think we're okay to move forward.
Okay. Close the public hearing. And any further discussion from the board? Hallelujah.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2, series 2025, an ordinance of the town of Minturn amending chapter 16, article 17 of the Minturn Municipal Code.
Kate seconds.
Motion by Gusty, second by Kate. Roll call, please.
Kate, aye.
Brian, I.
Gusty, aye.
Eric, I.
And Rely. Moving on. Resolution number 5, series 2025, a resolution approving a contract for an interim town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, Mike Sawyer has done all of the heavy lifting on
Okay.
this to get this prepared. And then Katie Sickles on the other end did all the heavy lifting to get it to the point where she could jump on board. So I am going to turn it over to them.
This is a professional services contract. The scope is until we have a permanent town manager in place. The contract allows Katie to work for the town up to 20 hours a week, with a cap at 100 hours a month, recognizing there may be some weeks where she has to go a little bit above 20 hours. The pay rate is $150 an hour. The town will reimburse reasonable expenses. I think Katie and maybe Michelle can discuss a little bit about the expectation that a lot of the work that she's going to be doing is going to be remote. But there will be occasions when she needs to be in Minturn or at a CDOT meeting or something like that. And my guess is we may choose to extend this contract a little bit after the new full-time manager is hired, just to give that person an opportunity to get into the projects and understand what's been going on, and to utilize some carryover institutional knowledge that'll be developed during this period. So,
And
go ahead.
I can just add to that the way that this has been broken out is Katie will be handling all of the capital improvement projects. So Main Street Phase 2 sidewalks, keeping the Minturn water treatment plant construction progress on track, Minturn, North Minturn connector or the Railroad Avenue pedestrian improvements, Bellin Bridge replacement, Norman Avenue paving, Nelson Avenue potential heat exchange. So Katie will be handling capital improvement projects, and Jay will be handling staff personnel and resident issues that arise. So that's how that's been broken out, since Jay is physically here to handle those things on a day-to-day basis. And then Katie, if you want to get up and introduce yourself to the council and the team and the public, we're thrilled to have you coming on board.
Sure. Well, my name is Katie Sickles. I do know this area. My dad was a Colorado native, returned from the Army, went to work for Climax. So certainly been in the area for a while, been on the western slope for really most of my life. So really excited. I'm never gonna fill Michelle's shoes, I can tell that already, but I'll do what I can to that gap. before you hire a town manager. So anyway, really excited to be here.
And Katie has extensive experience in all of the types of capital projects that we're currently doing, including water treatment facilities.
Yeah, and she's pretty much does a lot of this kind of work and on the
Yes,
management.
yes, I do.
She had a great resume. We highly recommended her. And so during the meeting, if you get a chance, or at the end of the meeting, if you're still here, have a chat with her. Okay, thank you, Katie.
Welcome.
I did see a typo in the resolution. It was kind of like on, for a second there, fourth paragraph, fifth paragraph, kind of under the highlight area. It says Willie Powell is hereby appointed interim town administrator. I have a feeling it must have been a cut and paste probably. But I just wanted to make sure we didn't have that in there.
So he's being silent, so I'll take this opportunity to blame Jay. Thank you, Jay.
Jay, you just made Michelle's night.
I
You really did.
Now, anything I can do.
and Gusty, thank you for always being so thorough.
No problem.
Okay, and while we're talking to Jay, Jay's going to be we're going to have two town managers. Katie is going to is going to manage all of the projects. Jay is going to be the in-house town manager and manage staff and the flow of work going on in the offices. We, as long as he doesn't do any more typos, I think we'll do a great job. And
Sort of delegating.
yes, indeed. So if you just want to come in the office and talk to the boss, it'll be Jay. If you're got a project that you're trying to get done, then you may be talking to Katie. Okay, with that, you ready to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve resolution number 5, series 2025, a resolution appointing an interim town administrator, Katie Sickles and Jay Rungard.
Kate seconds.
Okay, got a motion by Gusty, second by Kate. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. You have a contract. Yay. Next, we have resolution number 6, series 2025, a resolution approving a conditional use permit for light manufacturing at 161 Main Street and 161 Nelson Avenue. Who's got that one, Madison?
I do.
Okay.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, as you said, a conditional use permit. It is specifically for light manufacturing to allow for a distillery at 161 Main and 161 Nelson. The distillery is roughly 3,600 square feet. It's 2 levels with a max height measured to a midpoint of the roof of 23 feet. And then it also has a couple of at the top to kind of harken back to historic distilleries, and those are allowed to protrude even more as stated in the staff report. This did receive a recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission with conditions. Because this is a conditional use permit hearing, not a DRB hearing, I will not be going through the DRB or the DRB criteria and findings. However, I certainly can answer any questions if you should have them. Specifically, I'm going to start going through all of the conditional use permit criteria and findings. So just to kind of set the stage, I have 3 conditions that not 3 conditions, I apologize, 3 definitions that I'd like to go through. So a conditional use means a use listed in the character area use tables and permitted upon approval of the town council upon showing that such use in a specified location will comply with the conditions and standards for the zone and location proposed. Conditional use permit means a use permit issued by the town stating that the conditional use meets all the standards and conditions set forth in this chapter. And manufacturing light means an establishment engaged in manufacturing, assembly, compounding, processing, packaging, treatment, or distribution of projects, including primary product production from raw materials or production of services, but excluding establishments which produce or emit toxic or noxious gases, odors, or fumes, excessive noise, vibration or electrical interference, or similar substances or conditions onto adjacent or other properties, or dangerous to the comfort, peace, enjoyment, health, and safety of the community. So the town council, upon review of this conditional use permit, should you choose to approve it, must find the necessary findings that the proposed location of the use is in accordance with the purposes of this chapter, the community plan, and the purposes of the zone in which the site is located. That the proposed location of the use and the conditions under which it would be operated or maintained will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, or materially injurious to properties or improvements in the vicinity. And that the proposed use will comply with each of the applicable provisions. So you'll find within subsection 6 of the staff report, staff findings and analysis, staff has responded to each of the different criteria and findings that the code requires. So in regards to the relationship and impact of the use on the community development objectives of the town, staff cited multiple excerpts from the community plan that staff, showing that staff does believe that this is supported by the community plan. The effect of the use or distribution of population, transportation, utilities, schools, parks, and recreational facilities, and other public facilities and public facility needs. Because this is a business within our downtown area, this likely will have a material impact. However, staff does not believe that this is specific to the distillery, just that any business going there would have an impact. Much like number C, or letter C, the effect upon traffic. Again, any use that happens on this lot will have an increase in traffic to this area. Staff does not believe that this is specific to the conditional use permit of the distillery. Criteria D, the effect upon the character area of the area. The character of the area in which the proposed use is to be located, including the scale and bulk of the proposed use in relation to surrounding uses, the amount of noise, light, and glare, dust, and compatibility of the use with the character area it is in, and surrounding uses. Staff does not believe that this will have a negative effect. This is the 100 block Zone A commercial zone district, which is designated for these more high intensity uses. This building is nowhere near as large as what could theoretically be built on that lot should it be maxed to its dimensional limitations. And so it will actually have a theoretically smaller impact than what somebody else could theoretically propose. Under necessary findings that I went through just a minute ago, that the proposed location of use is in accordance with the purposes of this chapter, I did cite, again, an excerpt from the community plan stating that the district was updated to the community plan, updated concurrent to the community plan update, and includes two sub areas: 100 block A, properties fronting onto Main Street, and 100 block B, properties to the west of Main along Williams. The intent of this district is to incentivize sales tax generating uses and the reuse of existing structures, while new construction is required to fit in with the rest of the 100 block through new design standards and guidelines. The proposal is, in staff's opinion, it does meet that intent statement. Necessary finding number 2, that the proposed location of the use and the conditions under which it would be operated or maintained will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. As stated in the staff report, there are 3 different conditions, and there have also been representations made by the applicant within the Planning Commission hearings stating that they will be doing everything that they possibly can to mitigate any potential vapors or escape from the property boundaries in the case of monitors that I'm sure Stephen Spence can speak greatly to, especially as mentioned in the staff report, and as I'm sure that you saw attached to the staff report, public comment received. There is a concern by a member of the public about whiskey fungus, as it's colloquially known. I won't even attempt to try and say what its scientific name is. However, the applicant has reached out to an expert on the matter, and we do not believe that there's a significant risk in regards to this due to the amount of barrels being stored on the property as well as our climate. So again, I expect Steph and Spence will also be speaking to that in their presentation. And then the necessary finding that the proposed use, number 3, that the proposed use will comply with each of the applicable provisions of this chapter. Staff believes that this can be met. So at the Planning Commission meeting of January 8th, where this was heard and received a recommendation of approval with conditions, the main topics of discussion were clear vision sight triangles at the corners of the building, which after working through what the actual requirements were, the Planning Commission was okay with it. And then ensuring that the loading dock remains a loading dock space. You'll notice that one of the conditions within the resolution and also within the staff report does say that condition number 3, that the testimony given in regards to the loading dock remaining a loading dock and not being used as parking in the future is binding, and so that will remain something that is temporary in nature. 2 members of the public did speak at the hearing. One spoke out against it, again in relation to this whiskey fungus, and one spoke out for it, saying that it would be a nice addition to the town. Staff has also received since then another public comment that was added to the packet from Miss Lindsay Mangat, who is in support of the distillery, and then we received another one over the weekend from Chris and Tessa Manning stating that they are also in support of the Eagle River whiskey, and I can read that into the record once we get to public comment. So, in summary, staff and planning commission are recommending approval with conditions of resolution number 6. We have three associated conditions. One of them does overlap with the previously approved variance. And one of the conditions on the variance and also attached to this is that the amended final plat combining the 2 lots shall be completed prior to building permit issuance. I do want to let everybody know that that is currently within the process. So that's, yes, it's being processed. I'll leave it at that. That signage is encouraged to not allow parking in the loading dock area and also directing people to park in the municipal lot, and that the testimony given in regards to the loading dock remaining a loading dock is binding.
Thank you.
Of course.
At this time, I overlooked the fact that I need to declare a conflict of interest because I rent some of my property in the business park to spend some stuff, so I'm going to recuse myself now and finish my cake. Eric will take it from there.
All right. Any discussion or questions from the council? I don't have any at this time. All right. It is a resolution, I believe so. We'll open it up to public comment because I know there's a couple people in the audience that.
Or if I could, I think, let's give the applicant a few minutes to comment on their application, and then you can open it up for public.
Perfect. Let's do that.
Spence Dubauer, 161 Main and Nelson. We are combining them. It will just be 161 Main eventually. We do have a couple preemptive comments about light manufacturing and then noxious gases and odors. I think there's a misunderstanding about the systems that go on, and I sent some photos and diagrams of what the actual process looks like to hopefully quell some fears about what will be emitting. But to get there first, manufacturing light for this conditional use permit is not something that we just made up to fit within the table of the use code. Light manufacturing as a distillery is defined by the International Building Code and the National Fire Protection Agency, NFPA, as light manufacturing. So it fits within their definitions, and it fits within the town code definitions as manufacturing light. So here's a still. There's no ethanol coming out of there. It would be wasteful and unprofitable to boil the whiskey and let it go into the air. It vaporizes it in these big, the boilers, and then it goes up into the head here across the line arm, and it goes into the condenser. These are all closed processes, and then we go into sealed tanks, closed tanks, or barrels. So we're not letting ethanol go into the distillery or the air. If we go to scroll down just a little bit, that's just a diagram of it if we need any more clear one. This is a fermenter. This is where most of your smell would come from. After you mash, which is again a closed process, you add grain and hot water. There's no smell there. It's just like if you're soaking some flour with no yeast on your table. But that mashing process is closed because we're heating it. We want to keep the temperatures as best we can. Then it goes into the fermenter. The fermenter is where you add the yeast, and the yeast creates the alcohol and it emits CO2. It's all closed. You can do open fermentation. We are not going to do that because we want to capture that. Stephanie is working with CSU engineering students to develop a system to capture the CO2, compress it, and then sell it to greenhouses and or beer companies to reintroduce into their beer. We don't like wasting stuff, and carbon into the air, as little as it can be, we'd like to capture it and use it as best we can. So that will be a closed system as well. If it was open, it would not smell outside. If there's a number of downtown distilleries. There's Marble over in Carbondale. There's Pullman in Frisco, right on Main Street. Lee Brothers in Salida, Deerhammer in Buena Vista. They are all within downtown cores where they're distilling, aging a little bit of whiskey. There are no odors outside. Some of them ferment open, some of them ferment closed. You walk in, it might smell a little bit like a bakery. That's the worst smell that you're gonna get. And then that is really all I have. As far as danger of alcohol or CO2 gathering in the space, that's a danger of living in your home as well. We all have sensors for that. We have gas-fired fireplaces. There are risks of explosion in every house that burns fuel or gas in our town. That risk is never going to be zero, but if we maintain our equipment and we take care of it and have sensors, that risk becomes very low. Again, no matter if we had a gas-fired boiler, there's still a risk of a fire breaking out in a building because we have gas inside. But we're going to mitigate that as best we can. And it doesn't behoove us to be willy-nilly with any of those processes because then we lose a building.
And we're fully fire sprinkled.
And we're fully fire sprinklers by building code and FPA again. That is all I have.
Maybe the number of barrels.
Number of barrels, and Steph can talk a little bit more about this because she researched. We have a max probably capacity on floor space of about 100 barrels that we could store there as maybe a secondary use of bottling and before they move over to our storage facility, which will be offsite. The minimum that Dr. James Scott talked about with whiskey fungus would be 22,000 barrels. So we're on orders of magnitude below what the ethanol concentration in our distillery or outside that could start to create the whiskey fungus.
Mostly, I'm just gonna, Stephanie Neubauer, 161 Main Street, and also 444 Eagle River Street. And I mostly want to say thanks, Michelle, for everything you've done, and everybody that's here. I'm a little nervous. So we're gonna just kind of review it again. The whiskey fungus is a real thing. You've all heard about it since we've introduced this. We've heard a lot more about it as well. I went back through because I didn't feel comfortable enough saying it's just not going to happen. I felt like pretty safe about that since we've been to a lot of Colorado distilleries and we've never seen it. But I wanted to really research this much more deeply. And so the articles that you will read about whiskey fungus, for example, this one in the Wall Street Journal, this one in Newsweek, this one in the New York Times, they all have the same reference, and that is Dr. James Scott. And importantly, he's usually on the side of the townspeople against the distilleries. And so I wrote to him and said, And I'm just gonna read just a little excerpt of this. Sorry, I've got so many papers right now. But I just said who I am, and I used to be an MD interested in airways and respiratory problems. I've never seen black fungus near our distilleries in Colorado, and I was under the impression that our cold winters and more arid climate would be less supportive of fungal growth. Since we are doing a new build, I'm wondering if a tightly sealed, energy-efficient, modern building is enough to contain the spread of ethanol vapor, or if we need to place air filtration or even thermal oxidizers, which I have yet to learn about. And so I then had to email him a few more times, but just said, look, I just want to make sure this is safe for my town to bring this in. I have kids that are here, all of that stuff. And so he did finally email me back, and we spent an hour and a half doing a Zoom chat. We talked about our climate. He looked at weather underground information from the area. We looked at the fact that it is, Lynn very smartly asked if we looked at if it's a valley, and he did look at all of that. But he just kept coming back to one thing, which was the numbers. He said, we're just not seeing this under 10 to 20,000 barrels. And I'm correcting your numbers a little bit, but to put that in context, if we're at full capacity, like 3 shifts a day, we could make 1,000 barrels a year. So it would take us 10 to 20 years to make this much whiskey that would start to be a problem. And that we wouldn't sell a single barrel, and that would all be stored at our facility, which we just don't have room for. So I felt very sure about saying that this is a safe thing, that we're not going to cause whiskey fungus. And then Dr. Scott, I know you can see it in your packets, but he wrote, I would be happy to be their neighbor. He doesn't get any kickbacks from that. We can't send whiskey to Canada. He said, don't even try. He also mentioned maybe putting some ethanol sensors around our distillery and around town, just so that we can be ahead of information. So if there is a buildup of ethanol in the air for some reason, we can say, we're here to figure that out first. And so to answer your question from the P&D meeting, if we did have a bump in our ethanol in the area, we would simply stop production, and that would stop it. If you read about this, ethanol, when it's cut off, the fungus does die. So I do think that we have some really good plans going forward as far as how to make sure it stays safe, but I think that's all sort of overkill in the first place. And then the other thing was about the odors as well. I took Lachlan, my 9-year-old, and we went over to the Breckenridge distillery to go smell it, and we interviewed a lot of neighbors who've lived in the area for a long time, and none of them said that there were any problems with the smells. I do have those on video if anyone's interested in it. One of the distilleries we visited stunk on the inside, but as soon as you got outside, it was not smelly at all. And we'll do everything we can to just be good neighbors and good community.
Thank you. On that note, we can open it up to public comment. A reminder to the public, it's going to be a 5-minute maximum talking time. If you guys need more time, we can poll the council if they want to add 2-minute increments, but start with 5 minutes. Try to keep it brief, please.
Yes, I'll go first.
Yes, please. Name and address.
Yeah, I'm Hawkeye Flaherty at 160 8th Street. And, you know, I talked to Earl about this, about getting some extra time, because I was going to come 2 weeks ago and make a presentation, and they said no, but he said he would allow me extra time because of the presentation I have. So I'm here on behalf of myself and my property at 160 and 162 Main Street, which is right across the street from this. And on behalf of lifelong resident, Mr. Frank G. Sanders Jr. at 142 Main Street. We're both asking you to deny this special use or conditional use permit. You know, I disagree with staff. This building and use does not comply with the design standards and guidelines for development, which Minturn has adopted. The building and use for the site is non-compliant with the 2003 Minturn Community Plan and Chapter 16 of the Municipal Code. So let's look at the physical non-compliance. If you read under Appendix B, Building Design Standards and Guidelines, Building Form and Massing, Paragraph A, The maximum length of any wall on the same plane along the front and rear shall be 50 feet. And along the side shall be 75 feet. After 75 feet dimension, the building wall must shift on a horizontal plane a minimum of 3 feet. This building does not do that on the north side of that building. It's non-compliant at this time. And I'm wondering why we're having a hearing with inaccurate information being presented to the public. This is just the brick and mortar part of the development that is not compliant with the code. The non-compliance with the new vision, the community and imagination Minturn community plan, and chapter 16, specifically amending appendix B, Minturn design standards and guidelines for the revitalization of the 100 block is even worse. Many of you spend hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars rewriting the code for the 100 block. And the first development considered doesn't even come close to meeting the new requirements you set forth in a recodification of chapter 16. Pardon me while I put on my specs. Wrong specs. Well, we call it. To me, it's disappointing that we're here watching this developer try to extract concessions from the town for chapter 16 so they can build the building they want to build and put in a business they want. Instead of building a business that reflects and enhances the vision you all work so hard to achieve. The use of this business is out of compliance with Chapter 16, Appendix B, Minturn Standard and Guidelines on several levels. To begin with, it does not comply with the purpose. The purpose of this area is to provide convenient commercial services to residents and visitors and to promote the development of the town's primary retail commercial district. Accommodation of sales tax generating commercial uses and non-street level residential units can enhance Old Town vitality while maintaining the visual character and scale. This developer has put in a minimal amount of commercial and no residential uses. The developer is, for all intents and purposes, putting in an industrial use. Street level space within the 100 block commercial zone shall be dedicated to lodging and historical properties and retail use. This business, for all intents and purposes, is a manufacturing business. Their street level use is a tasting room coffee shop which occupies around 30% of the available first floor space. The remaining 70% of the street level floor is for storage and warehousing. They just sold. They're going to store 100 barrels of whiskey down there. The warehousing is specifically prohibited by section 16670 and 16360 of the town code. Just as an FYI, you cannot put a condition on a use specifically excluded in the code that allows for that to be approved. Non-street level space, the second floor and up within the 100 block commercial zone may be used for compatible retail, office, and residential use. The second floor of the whiskey building is designated to be for manufacturing, warehousing, and storage of material to make whiskey. This is completely out of compliance with the town's code. So Madison talked about the definitions that apply to this: manufacturing light, conditional uses, and conditional use permit. A manufacturing light allows specific types of manufacturing may be approved as a conditional use. If you look, distilleries are specifically not listed. But in this case, the developer has asked the town to consider it as a light manufacturing use. That's fair. The other uses is in this building, a tasting room and warehousing for the distillery. They are separate uses and need to be considered separately. If the distillery stops distilling, the tasting room and the warehouse can still operate. They are not a function of the distillery. They are separate and distinct uses of their own. These uses are not allowed in 16-6-70 if you look at the use table. So you have to go down to 16-360, which covers uses which are not listed. And if you look at 16-6-30, it says uses that are not listed in the character area use table in section 16-6-70 shall be considered to be uses that are not allowed. This use is not allowed.
Okay, we're going to pause you right there. We do need council's approval to continue speaking.
I'm okay with that.
That's fine.
All right, you got 2 more minutes there, Hawkeye.
Okay, well, it's longer than 2 minutes because I'm talking slow. Okay? Now, uses that are not listed, there are a couple outs for the developer. One, the council can amend the code and change the list from conditional use to use by right, if you want to do that. And determination of a similar use, the tasting room may qualify, but there's nothing in that use table that I could find that's a similar use to warehousing and storing. Nothing there. So Madison talked about the definition of manufacturing light, because this definition is where the code expressly excludes distilleries from being considered for a conditional use to operate in the town. These are the standards that the developer must meet. Again, I'll read it again in case you forget it, since Madison read it. Manufacturing light means an establishment engaged in manufacturing, assembly, compounding, processing, packaging, treatment of distribution of projects, including primary product production from raw materials or production of services, excluding establishment which produce or emit toxic or noxious gases or fumes. They've stood up here and admit this thing is going to produce toxic gases, odors, and fumes. It doesn't see it contain it. It says it cannot produce it. Excessive noise, vibration, electrical interference, or similar substances or conditions onto adjacent or other properties, or is dangerous to the comfort, peace, enjoyment, health, and safety of the community. Besides producing and emitting toxic or noxious gases or odors or fumes, this building will be a standing firebomb sitting in the middle of the 100 block. These exclusions are everything the Eagle River Whiskey Distillery produce along with their whiskey. The definition of manufacturing light is what specifically excludes distilleries from operating in the town. The 100 block was never envisioned to be an industrial site. So I've gone through this and you're probably thinking, well, they can get a conditional use permit. Can't they operate the distillery under a conditional use permit? Short answer is yes. If the council approves their conditional use application and grants a permit. But you guys can't do that because this business does not qualify for a conditional use permit because it emits toxic noxious gases, which is excluded from the manufacturing light division. Earl knows this. If you look at the definition of a conditional use permit, a conditional use permit means a use permit issued by the town stating that the condition conditional use, which is a distillery and a warehouse, has to meet all the standards and conditions set forth in the chapter. It cannot emit those fumes. It can make them, it cannot emit them. The question is, why does a business have to get a conditional use permit that can only be issued if the business must meet all the standards and conditions in Chapter 16? The definition's a little confusing and hard to understand. I dealt with conditional use application for many years as a councilman, so has Earl. And he knows as well as I that a conditional use permit is not a get out of jail free card. It cannot give the businesses an exemption from the standards and conditions set forth in the code.
Okay, I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap it up there if you can.
Yeah, I got a couple more pages. I'm hurrying.
Thank you.
It is a permit that may be issued when a business like this one that does not comply with the building code has made changes and adjustments to the use that brings the business into compliance with the code. Basically, this business does not comply with the code, and they are required to show the changes they made that brings the business into compliance. The developer has to show and prove that they have made adjustments to their production of whiskey so it does not produce or emit toxic or noxious gases, odors, or fumes, and as a potential firebomb is not dangerous to the comfort, peace, enjoyment, health, and safety of the community. The developer cannot just exhaust it outside. They have to not produce it. If it's not physically, it is not physically possible for the developer not to produce gases, odors, and fumes. It is a natural reaction of the process and cannot be prevented. This is why their application has to be denied.
Thank you, Hawkeye. We'll wrap it up there if that's all
I
right.
got a little more. Let me finish. I'm the only one against this, so I'll take their time. I ask you, please.
They're
Is it
not
okay
here.
with you guys?
Yeah.
I'm fine. Yeah, finishing. Go ahead, finish.
All right. Now this is reinforced by the definition of a conditional use, which reads, a conditional use means a use listed in the character area use tables and permitted upon approval of the town council upon showing that such use in a specified location will comply with the conditions and standards of that zone. This building does not comply. It produces gases. This is why conditional uses are so hard to get, because people have to adjust the building to meet the law, not get an exemption from it. So when it reaches the point where council is considering approving this application and setting conditions for it, I would like you to ask yourself this question. Do these conditions bring this business into compliance with no production or emission of noxious gases, odors, and fumes? That's what they have to do. If the answer is no, then there's something wrong, and that's a problem. So I asked the internet a couple of questions because, you know, if it's on the internet, it must be true. So, do distilleries produce toxic and noxious gases? Yes. Distilleries produce toxic and noxious gases, primarily including ethanol vapor, which is flammable, can be hazardous, along with carbon dioxide and other potentially harmful gases like sulfur dioxide. You know, ethanol vapors, which catch fire, blow up, and burn. Basically, a distillery is a potential firebomb just waiting to go off. Carbon dioxide is toxic in high concentration, can cause asphyxiation and death. Are they required to have a sprinkler system? Well, Spencer stood up there and said they're going to have a really good sprinkler system. However, please note that a sprinkler system will not effectively put out an alcohol fire. The water tends just to spread it around. The only reason they have sprinkler systems is to try and maintain it while the fire department shows up. The only thing that'll put out an alcohol fire is alcohol-resistant foam. So it's the only agent that can extinguish an ethanol fire. You can put as big a sprinkler system as you want, it's not going to put out the fire. And the fumes, the process of making hard alcohol such as whiskey, bourbon, and gin is fraught with danger, with the potential for fire occurring from the release of flammable compounds, such as ethanol alcohol. These vapors can come from leaks in tanks, casks, and equipment, such as transfer pumps, pipes, and flexible hoses. It doesn't just come from the whiskey barrels stored in the site. It produces noticeable odor. Does it produce, let me back up. What are the odors from distilling? Distilleries definitely produce noticeable odors, particularly during the process, due to the release of various chemical compounds like alcohol, which causes fires, aldehydes, which could potentially cause death, and sulfur compounds, so the area will smell like rotten eggs. I don't think we need all of the gases and stench floating around the air in the 100 block. Stephanie talked about the whiskey fungus. If you make whiskey, you have the potential to create a fungus. It lives off the alcohol. Okay? You can do what you can to keep it under control. If you make whiskey, you have the potential to create whiskey fungus. Last page, guys.
I appreciate it.
This application is not about having a drink in a cute little shed in the middle of town and shooting the shit with the owners, who are very nice people. This is about a developer trying to squeeze every concession they can out of the town. They got a variance that never should have been granted. They submit a building plan that doesn't meet the building code, and a use that barely begins to comply with the standards and guidelines council just codified. It's about a developer constructing a noisy, stinky, potential mold-producing firebomb industrial site in the middle of town. This type of use has never been envisioned for the 100 block. I was here when the original code was approved. This was in the original code. It has never been allowed, and it should never be allowed. You don't put an industrial site in the middle of town. This is why Mr. Sanders and I respectfully request that this conditional use be denied. Thank you for the extra time. I appreciate your patience, guys, and good luck making the right decision.
Thank you, Hawkeye. We appreciate your input.
Tim McMahon, Avon. First, from the council, can I get 10 minutes to talk and keep on repeating myself over and over a bunch? No? Okay, cool. Worth a shot, Second, whatever Hawkeye's smoking, I definitely want some of that, because I don't know if you didn't pay attention to anything they said, but they answered most of your questions. Third, if I still drank, I would definitely be a draw for me to come to Minturn if there was a distillery. I know a lot of people that go to Eagle Bale because VBC's there, which it never hurts to bring those in, because those are going to wander into other businesses. Let's see. Also, I'm pretty sure, just from what they were talking about and stuff, and it doesn't leak toxic fumes. They said that numerous times. And they also said that why would they leak ethanol? Because that's money. Kind of makes sense. Also, I've never ever heard of a distillery turning into a firebomb and exploding. But I've heard of lots of cars and trucks blowing up. So I would like to ask town council to look into banning all cars and trucks in town, because they are all possible firebombs waiting to burn down this town. So thanks for allowing me to share.
More golf carts.
More golf carts, exactly.
Electric.
Hello, my name is Robert Creasy. I live at 453 Pine Street. My office is at 105 Williams. I'm the architect for the project, and I would like to respectfully disagree with Hawkeye. I believe our project fully complies with the codes. Specifically, the north wall is not over 75 feet, it's 66 feet long. The footprint was reviewed by staff, the design review board. The variance process was very thorough, going over the footprint of the building, so I believe that all complies. Specifically, the question about storage and warehousing, actually under the uniform building code, the UBC, the use is manufacturing light. Storage is an accessory use to that. So when we are submitting for building permits, it'll be designated as manufacturing light, and then the assembly 2, which is a tasting room, a restaurant, a tavern, which while we're referring to it as a tasting room, it really does fall more under the tavern restaurant kind of designation. And that is fully approved within the use tables for the town. The manufacturing light, as Spence pointed out, under the building code and the National Fire Protection Agency code, this qualifies as manufacturing light. The concern that Hawkeye expressed over and over again about gases, I think Spencer clearly demonstrated. We are containing all gases that are being produced on site. And anything that may come from the barrels is so minimal, it's less than 0.5% of what's needed to produce the whiskey fungus. There is nothing that should be producing noise any more than anyone's boiler on the side of their house where you're exhausting your boilers. So there will be, the last thing, the fire sprinkler system is not just willy-nilly what we want to throw on the building. It's actually what's required by the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Agency, and specifically for manufacturing light that involves alcohol above 16%. So we are meeting national codes for something that will put out an alcohol fire. Thank you very much.
Second floor.
And the second floor, I'm sorry that while Hawkeye did a lot of research about what he thinks is a risk, he didn't actually look at the plans. The second floor is simply a mezzanine that is overflow for the tasting room. So there's no manufacturing happening on the second floor, and technically under the Uniform Building Code, it is a one-story building because a mezzanine of such a small size counts towards the first floor. It's not technically a second floor. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else from the public would like to comment? One person. Is there someone online?
We do have a couple people on Zoom that have their hands raised if we don't have anyone else in person.
Yeah, go ahead, Cindy, if you want to unmute the first person.
Okay. I've got Tom Sullivan first.
Tom, name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Tom Sullivan, 116 Nelson Avenue. I brought this up during the variance for the rear setback, but I'm concerned about the traffic flow on Nelson and how a car that turns into Nelson is going to exit. And as far as I can tell, they can't exit. So, I'm assuming that these guys are going to start in May and we don't have a plan for the traffic flow. I imagine they'll put a chain link fence up on their property line. They're going to have a difficult time digging a hole that big, and they're going to need all their property. But we have, as a town, haven't addressed that. And you're going to have cars doing a 3-point turn in a 4-way intersection with a hillside coming into it. And it's a really dangerous situation as it is now. Arno has said that he can't maintain that hill and that it's, slippery and icy. And So I'm concerned about the safety of my family, you know, driving down the hill and having a car there and not being able to stop. So I guess my question is, has the town looked into this? Do they care about it? And if so, what are you going to do?
Thank you, Tom. Well, I know the town is looking into it, so we'll keep you posted.
No, that's not enough, man. I mean, it's got to be just, well, I asked this at the variance and I got that. I mean, we're about to approve something that's going to have serious impacts, safety impacts. You know, in my opinion, you know, by giving them the rear variance, you know, 20-foot rear variance made that intersection more dangerous. And you can't just say, oh, you can't approve this conditional use without having a plan for the traffic flow. I mean, that all comes into whether you're going to approve the conditional use. You've got to be concerned about the safety of your citizens. What happens if somebody comes down and there's somebody in a car in that doing a 3-point turn in that intersection to get out of Nelson and somebody's killed? You know, you just can't say, no. I mean, when will that be addressed? I mean, he could be get a building permit and put the fence up April 1st.
Is there a paving discussion? Yeah, I think so. Michelle, do we have that on the calendar?
Do we have that on the calendar for paving discussion on?
That's been brought up as an item to discuss regarding Nelson Street traffic flow. So it's a future agenda item.
Okay. Yeah, so Tom, it is a future agenda item currently.
I would say we should put that on the list of sooner than later, future agenda items. Well, we're going to want to pave this summer anyway, right?
Potentially,
yeah.
And that's a discussion too.
Yeah. I think we should combine those discussions because we shouldn't be paving without a plan of how the traffic flow is going to look. So,
yeah. There you go. Awesome. All right, Cindy, next person online.
Looks like Larry Stone has his hand raised.
Perfect. Larry, name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Larry Stone, 156 Main Street, and also representing 152 Main Street is my partner Jane Rohr, and for 201 Main Street, for 2 condo units and a business. We are 100% in favor of what Spence and Stephanie are doing. We feel like it's been a long time coming since we've had a developer willing to come in and take a risk on Minturn. And we're very grateful and supportive. And I feel like all of the objections that I have heard can be mitigated. And I encourage the council to vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Cindy, anybody else there?
No one else with their hand raised. I think our other Zoom guests are here for other items.
Perfect. In that case, we will move things right along. Bring it back to council. Any questions or?
Did Madison have something to read in?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I could suggest, we could take a 5-minute break. And then I would give the applicant an opportunity to respond to public comment.
Okay.
And then our staff can provide any additional comments. And then you, as the council, can ask any questions you want to have.
Would you like me to read into the record the last public comment received before we break?
We can do that. Jay can also, or Jay would note that we received written comments from Hawkeye, which will be included in the record for this matter.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so before we close public comment. So as I stated when I was giving my presentation, this is from Chris and Tessa Manning at 293 Boulder Street. Hello, Minturn Town Council. We are writing today to show our full support for Eagle River Whiskey / Minturn Whiskey. We need life downtown and businesses that bring all of us out, locals and tourists alike. Tessa and I have shared and showed family and friends the Minturn Whiskey Company and all have loved the experience, spent money, and added some dollars to Minturn sales tax. We need life in the 100 block, and MWC is that, bringing life and community to our little diamond in the rough. We urge the Town Council to approve this project. Thanks so much, Chris and Tessa Mann.
Thank you. With that, we'll take a 5-minute break and then come back. All right, we are reconvening back to the Minturn Town Council's regular session. Continuing on, I believe the direction would be some comments from the applicant at this point.
Spence Neubauer, Eagle or Minturn Whiskey Company, 161 Main. I feel like I addressed a lot of the points at the beginning, but to go over traffic, that's an interesting intersection. We get overloaded on Friday and Saturday when everyone's going to Thai Kitchen and the Country Club. Before we were even there, people park there however they want. So it's already a problem. We're not creating it any worse. We're probably going to solve it a little bit better with having some stuff there. And if we didn't get the variance, instead of 10 foot within the property line, we could have a permanent planter within 5 foot of that rear property line, making that one-way or two-way William Street to underneath the bunkhouse even smaller. So we're actually creating some space from what someone else could build. I don't know how much traffic on public rights of way goes to private property owners, but maybe someone else could speak to that better. Also, with our current use of building, we will have waste heat that we are possibly sending to Nelson Street to help mitigate that icy hill. As far as every other point that everyone else brought up, I can answer those one by one, or if you guys have any specific questions, I could answer them on an as-needed basis.
Any specific questions or?
I don't have any specific questions, but I just want to comment on your, the road, because that's your guys' private property. If we do have a right-of-way problem on that road, it's our responsibility to take care of it, and I'm devoted to do that. We need to figure some alternative out for that road. I don't feel that, the variance that you got on the back was any change on it, because like you said, you could have put a planter there, and it's basically your property. So I feel that I support Tom 100% that, it's a safety problem, but it's on us to actually take care of it as a town. We shouldn't kind of put the burden on you guys saying that, you got a variance and you created this problem. The problem's there, the lot you bought's been vacant for so many years, people's just taking advantage of it. So, it's on to us to fix that road.
All set. Yeah, I didn't have any other further questions personally, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Back to staff.
So in light of the public comment that we've received tonight, and from direction from the town attorney staff, I'd like to suggest 2 more conditions to be added to the resolution should you vote to approve it. One of those conditions, just to formalize what the applicant has represented in the planning commission and the town council meetings, that there be ethanol monitoring systems placed around the building on the property. And then 2, that in recognition that during the building process, traffic is likely to be a little bit more hectic than it will be once the building is actually finalized, that with their building permit they submit as part of their construction management plans, how they plan to deal with traffic going to and from their site, parking, that kind of stuff.
Perfect. All right. With that, I will take a motion from council for resolution number 6, 2025.
Make a motion to approve resolution number 6, series 2025, a resolution approving a conditional use application for a new distillery at 161 Main and Nelson, in the town of Minturn, Colorado.
Point of clarification, you can, but you're not, you don't
With
have
the
to add
conditions
the-
proposed. Sorry, thanks, Mike. I even wrote them down and somehow immediately forgot that.
We got a motion. Do we have a second?
So the conditions that are outlined in this and the two
other
additional ones. ones. Okay, just wanted to get that out.
I'll second that with the 5 conditions.
All right, and it's a resolution, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution passes.
There is a typo in the resolution, midterm. There's extra U's in there.
I missed that
A new term.
For a different town.
Really sure what town she's working for.
We'll make sure those typos are corrected.
Yes.
All right. If Earl can hear us, Earl is welcome back to join. And we will move on to business item number D, ordinance number 3.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I can just add, in addition to the final conversation that took place, I will be requesting at the future agenda items portion of this meeting that staff bring forward a discussion to be had at the council level regarding traffic flow on the Nelson and Williams corridors, in addition to the potential heat exchange project and future paving, so that the council can hopefully have that. I've requested staff please prepare to have that completed and ready for a council discussion by April of this year.
Thank you, Michelle.
What did she say? So what are we on?
Ordinance number 3.
Okay, next item. Ordinance number 3, series 2025, first reading. An ordinance amending section 6-7-20 and 6-7-40 of the Minturn Municipal Code, establishing ownership and occupancy requirements for approval of a short-term rental license.
So a few weeks ago, we had a discussion item where council addressed an interest in amending the short-term rental ordinance to update it to better reflect the intent of the council under a couple of different scenarios. After lengthy discussion, the direction that staff took was that council continued to want to have a property ownership requirement for before you can obtain a short-term rental license for a period of 2 years. But in addition to simply owning the property, the council, as part of wanting to promote housing and community in the town, wanted to see that during this 2-year window that the property would be used as a primary residence either by the owner of the property or that it would be leased out for primary residence purposes during that 2-year period. So that was scenario A. Scenario B was that if you weren't looking to have a short-term rental license for the entirety of your property, but that the owner would be able to live on the property as their primary residence, but be able to generate some supplemental income by having a bedroom or a little loft above a garage or something like that available as a short-term rental. That the council acknowledged that could be helpful for getting new members of the community into the home ownership of the town. And so we wanted to not make getting a short-term rental license for less than all of the property have a 2-year waiting period. So I drafted an ordinance, and we have, through the public, received a little bit of feedback, which has been helpful. But the ordinance essentially implements what I just said, albeit in fewer words. So if you look at subsection D1, I call that the partial short-term occupancy. It's not a perfect definition or kind of nomenclature, but essentially, if you're looking to utilize 33% or less of the square foot floor area as that term is defined in our utility code. We had a definition already out there. We seemed good to use what we already had in the code. Then you can obtain a short-term rental license for up to that 33% without prior ownership or occupancy limits. In other words, young family buys a house has an appropriate area for a short-term rental opportunity that's less than a third of essentially the livable square footage. You can, on day one of your ownership, come in and submit an application to the town for approval of a short-term rental license. Then majority, again, not perfect word, but the idea being that if you're going above that 33%, that's when we continue to have the 2-year ownership requirement. And we include in that in addition to simply owning the property for 2 years, we want to have the property be used either as the owner's primary residence or that it's long-term rented to people who can use it as their primary residence. And in the definition section up above, I did manage to get a definition for long-term rental, which is in reference down below. That is a rental of residential property for a period of at least 6 months with not more than a 30-day break between tenancies. So we captured that one. Some of the astute members of the public did note that we're referencing kind of primary residence. That is not defined. It should be defined. I think primary residence under municipal law essentially means that you declare it to be your primary residence and you register to vote here. That generally has been the accepted definition. It's hard to at least monitor a situation where we're like, we want you to show that you're physically living there 6 months a year, something like that. I mean, we do have definitions around that kind of residential occupancy in the attainable housing section of the code. We could do something a little more robust. It does become a little challenging on the town to be able to verify that situation. So certainly a discussion item we can have with council. If I have misinterpreted the direction from the council coming out of the last meeting, we certainly can modify this. This is first reading of this ordinance. It gives us an opportunity to massage language and work on definitions between first and second reading.
Any questions for Mike?
I only had the one, and you answered it pretty good. It was on the partial short-term occupancy at 33%. I just don't know if I understand that, if you have a ADU that's 32%, you're able to rent it. But what about the rest of that place? Is it eligible for long-term rental?
Yes. You could rent. You could rent the rest of it as a long-term rental. Yeah.
All right.
Just that the short-term rental license would be limited to
the 33%. Okay. Thanks.
So let's say they're doing a long-term rental. Who is managing the short-term rental? Because we've always said they got a property manager or the primary resident living there.
Yep, I see that as kind of two separate questions. The town really doesn't get involved in long-term rental markets, leases. We really don't have any regulations around that whatsoever. Our short-term rental rules require that you have a manager within 10 miles, 15 miles?
50 miles.
50 miles. Okay, within 50 miles. I think the idea was some of those managers might live in Leadville. And so when you apply for a short-term rental license, even if it was just for a portion of a property, that would be one of the requirements that you would have to fulfill, is designating a manager and proving to the town you had management capacity for the short-term rental.
Okay. Any further questions for Mike right now? Okay, since this is an ordinance, I'll open it up for public hearing. Please. Please state your name and address, please.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm Kelly Anderson, 721 Main Street. I represent my family, and my family owns 721 Main Street, 942 Main Street, and 936 Main Street. And the ordinance you're proposing, 942 is a Airbnb, which my family owns, which, you know, the city of Minturn gets revenue from that. 936, we would like to remove that. It's a trailer and build something nice. And the requirement that the owner actually has to live there for 2 years is kind of out there. It's like me, I live at 721 Main Street. When I pass away, my nephew Rollins will demolish the house and build something nice. And, you know, to require him to live there for 2 years is, you know, we're driving. I mean, y'all were talking about building a distillery and everything. You know, Minturn was founded in 1902. Do we want to stay in 1902 or do we want to move forward? You know, like my house, it needs to be demolished. And thank God my nephew Rollins will demolish it when I'm gone. But, you know, to require him to live there for 2 years before he can rent it and recoup some of his money, I think is just wrong. If we want to pass that, and, you know, I don't understand all this stuff. I'm just a regular guy. But if you want to pass that stuff, it should be from now. If you're grandfathered in, which, you know, my family, like I said, they own 942, 936, and 721 Main. They should be grandfathered in. So if you want to pass that, pass it today forward. But anybody that owns the property now, because you're going to run people out. My family will sell in Minturn and go elsewhere. And Minturn is a great town. I've lived here for a long time. My family lives here. And I just think by doing what you're proposing, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, because I don't know. I don't know finance and all that. I'm just a simple guy. But it should be grandfathered in. If y'all want to do that, do it. But it should be from today forward. Like me, if I went out and bought a piece of property tomorrow, that's the rule. But not people that bought years ago who love Minturn. And that's all I got to say.
Okay, so this is actually loosening our code a bit. Could you maybe address that, Mike? You're talking about you've owned this house, but you're gonna, if you need to tear it down and rebuild, that means you would lose the short-term rental capability. Is that?
Yes, sir. I guess under the proposal.
The property that already has a license would not be affected. It's in the system. It's part of the.
So in other words, if my family, which my family does, they own 3 properties here, they would be grandfathered in.
For the one that has a short-term rental license today. For the other 2, you would continue to have, well, you would have 2 burdens to meet before you could get a short-term rental license. A, you would have to own the property for 2 years, which you would have already done.
He's owned that.
And B, you would need to have utilized it as a primary residence for 2 years. And that can either be by the owner of the property or that you can long-term rent it, that long-term being a lease over the term of six months. So that it would be used as a primary residence for 2 years before it could then be converted to a short-term rental.
Well, I just disagree with that, because we're getting ready to remove a trailer here in Minturn, and I think y'all have approved it or something, I don't know, but and build a home, and it would be a short-term rental. But you're telling me if you pass this, then we have to move into that trailer for 2 years before we could do anything else.
Or rent it long-term for 2 years.
Right.
Not
the trailer, the new thing.
Yeah, the new house. The new house, yeah.
But do you follow what I'm saying? I think anything y'all passed, should be grandfathered in, like anybody before today should be grandfathered in. In other words, if you want to make a short-term rental today, it can be. But if y'all pass the bill, then tomorrow you can't.
I
Because
think
we're
Mike
talking
said
about,
that if you have a short-term rental license now, you already have it.
right,
So you technically are grandfathered in if you're doing it right now.
For the property that has the short-term.
Short-term rental on it, yeah.
correct. Now, what about the property that's the long-term rental, that is the trailer that, you know, my brother's owned for years and years?
See, the reason why we've been trying to do this, we're trying to kind of encourage long-term rentals and have people living in town and not just short-term. That's the reason why we're looking at basically living in it for 2 years.
I understand that, Mr. Councilman, but I moved here 18 years ago and I had 3 jobs to make ends meet. And now these kids don't want to work 3 jobs. They want to smoke pot and work 1 job and want people like you and me, my brother, my family, to give them cheap rent. What happened to all that? You know, like I said, I worked 3 jobs when I moved here. And I just think if y'all do anything, it should be from today forward. Because you're about to prevent my family from demolishing a trailer here in Minturn and building a nice house that, you know, my brother's kids would live in. We would rent it Airbnb sometimes. And I just don't understand. I mean, you want to keep an eyesore instead of getting something beautiful for this town. And again, a minute ago, y'all were talking about putting a brewery, which I think is, you know, great. I mean, you know, we were 1902. This is 2025. Let's get going.
Okay, so
We have been going.
There's a little bit of disconnect here. The current law you have to deal with the same thing. It's always been that way. And the reason was we were concerned that some corporation would buy every house that was for sale and turn it into a mini hotel and say it's short-term rental. So that was why the 2-year thing was put in place. So with this, what we're talking about now, there's a little bit of flex in it. Now, another interesting thing is if the same parties had owned this property for a while.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, you're giving me words. I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. Yes, my family has owned this property for a long time. So it shouldn't fall under, you know, somebody has to move in for 2 years and be a full-time resident. I mean, it's like I said, you know, it starts today.
So any other thoughts from council? Because I don't know, it just seems like this is kind of a different thing that we haven't talked about before.
You know, we did have it.
Actually, I think this is what spurred this, which was that somebody had a property, they had owned a lesser value property, and they knocked it down, and they immediately went in for a short-term rental license, and that's what teed this up to get it to you.
Yeah, which takes away from the sense of community for the town.
That is the concern that we've been trying to address.
I mean, the short-term rental income brings money to the, you know, town of Minturn.
I mean, to clarify, this is why originally I thought we should just move to the more you complicate the code, I think the harder it is to understand and figure out the occupancy requirements. And then now we've got percentages and all this. My initial thought was community survey came back. People said they thought we had enough short-term rentals in town. We should say, great, we have enough short-term rentals in town, and say, that's it. Okay, if somebody gives up their license, then you can get one, or then they can get one, or whatever. And then we don't have to worry about keeping adding to our code, because I think it does make it a little confusing. But I would tend to think that, you know, if I'm going to use myself as an example, I'm not going to short-term rent my place, but I've owned it for 5 years and lived in it. I could go get a short-term rental license under the current law. I don't see why changing the code now would negate the last 5 years. Maybe I'm misunderstanding how it's written.
Okay, so the only difference that we're doing here is allowing someone to come in and build a new house. And in order to get a short-term rental, you would have to long-term rent the primary residence and meet the specifications, 33% for an STR. And you could do that. That's
Well-
not available now. You couldn't do that now.
Well, I understand that, Mr. Mayor.
You could, if under the current code, you'd have to wait 2 years no matter what. And you couldn't even long-term rent it. You had to be the primary residence and sit on it for 2 years. That's the current code.
But my question is, Mr. Mayor, what about people that have owned for years here in Minturn? That's my question. You're gonna change the rules for
So
people
I'm-
that have owned here.
I apologize for interrupting, but I'm happy to help clarify a few things. Under the current code, as it stands today, you are allowed to take your empty lot that you currently own and you are allowed to build a house and you are allowed to immediately short-term rent that because the owner, having owned the lot for 2 years, counts as the 2-year property ownership.
Thank you. That just answered everything.
So with today, that's the law today. So what?
Okay, so if you change it,
The impetus was that occurred where someone owned an empty lot, they built a house, they immediately short-term rented it, and then it was brought to council to please consider addressing the quote-unquote loophole whereby there was concerns that they weren't fully complying with the spirit of the 2-year code, which is what has brought us to the draft you see before us today. I would ask Mike if the concept of grandfathering in for any current property owners is something that the council can consider as part of a review of this ordinance.
Yep.
Yeah. So if the council should choose, you can consider moving forward with this ordinance with the addition of the grandfathering request so that anybody who currently owns property or a house or a trailer in Minturn and should want to either initially develop that property, demolish and redevelop, would still fall under the prior code.
Which is what we wanted to change because we were dissatisfied with the outcome.
Some were dissatisfied with the outcome.
And had it really been known, you just bought the property and let it
So
hang.
it's an option for the council if the council should choose to only enforce this new code on new property owners.
So, Mr. Mayor, we've kind of gone cattywampus around how we do public comment. And public comment is open and we need to make sure there aren't others
Yes.
participating who have public comment. We can then bring this back for council discussion after public comment is complete.
Sounds good. We understand your position, but you're way over our 5-minute limit.
yes, sir, I'm sorry. And I
That's
appreciate
fine. No,
it.
no, it's my fault.
Like I said, though,
So-
just grandfather it in.
Yeah, well, have a seat and wait. Lynn?
Lynn Teach, 253 Pine Street. The only thing I'm not hearing here is just to make sure that, however this turns out, that the people realize that the short-term rental still depends on us having the availability for the current amount we have. That was not mentioned at all. So currently, it's only a certain percentage of the homes in town. Just because you build that house and you want to short-term rent it, does not mean you can automatically short-term rent it unless the availability for the license is there. Thank you.
Cap remains unchanged. Thank you.
State your name and address, please.
Hi, I am Jessica Sullivan. I live at 116 Nelson. And I also own Minturn Rentals. It's the property management company in town. We have quite a few long-term rentals and also a handful of short-term rentals. So it's my understanding, I spoke with Cindy and a couple other people, that the proposed amendment allows existing short-term rentals to be grandfathered in. So that's not what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to share a little bit more on my experience with who's short-term renting their house and why I'm concerned about this amendment. So from what I gather, the goal is to have more community housing available. But this issue or this amendment does not directly solve the housing issue or work to solve it, it's inadvertently going to cause second homeowners to have no option to rent out their houses, and instead they're just going to sit vacant. Truly, in my opinion, truly there's nothing worse for a town to have a bunch of empty homes. I was born and raised here. I love Minturn, and two of the houses in the 4 houses where we live are vacant. It would be better if they were short-term rented and contributed to the new businesses and the businesses that have already been here. So a little bit of context on the short-term rentals that I do manage. None of them have ever been primary residences, and the owners do not intend to ever use them as their primary residence. They purchase the homes for their personal use, not as investments, and they don't really need to rent them out. They still would have bought the home even if we had this amendment in place. And a lot of the owners recognize that their house would be vacant the times that they're not using it, so they do feel a responsibility to rent it out and to contribute to the community. That being said, after spending millions of dollars on the home, they're not going to turn around and rent it out long term, because then they can't use it themselves, and that was the whole purpose of why they bought it in the first place. Right now we have the 2-year ownership requirement, and it's successful. It works well. It deters people from buying short-term rentals just to have them short-term rented. This is more second homeowners who are buying the houses, and that's why they are being short-term rented. We also sort of mentioned a little bit that there's a cap of 50 properties that can be short-term rented. We're only at about 30, and that's stayed pretty consistent over the past handful of years. So we're well below that cap. And I think the council, you guys should be concerned about keeping the lights on in these houses instead of having them just sit empty. And I'll give an example of a house that I just recently started managing. It's on Main Street. It's in a busy area. It's a visible house. We all drive by it every day. The owners bought the house 2 years ago. They waited the 2-year period. During that time, they used the house, but it did sit empty when they weren't using it. Now, you go by the house, there's snowmen in the yard, the lights are on, you can see people in the windows. The restaurant next door delivers takeout over the fence. It's active, it's lively. It feels like it's contributing to the community in a much better way. Oh, and one other thing. We just increased the short-term rental tax rate to 6.5%. Wouldn't it be better to have these homes rented out so we have that money to use? Otherwise, they will be sitting vacant. It's not like these homes are going to be rented out on a long-term basis. So I think we should just focus on finding ways to ensure these homes are contributing to the community. We're not going to not have second homeowners in our town. It's not going to happen. So we should make it easier rather than harder. And I think the 2-year ownership is fine the way it is. It does not need to be amended. And so I guess I'm going to ask one question about what is the intention of the amendment, because I don't see how this solves the housing issue. It's just going to leave homes empty.
Okay. Any questions for Jessica?
Or do you guys have any thoughts on like what's the goal, or why was this brought forward in the first place? Because I do think the 2-year ownership already successfully keeps people from buying an intern just to flip it to a short-term rental.
Well, quite frankly, the reason that brought us to this point was that we felt like there was an abuse going on.
Mm-hmm.
They would buy the property and sit on it for 2 years and then build it and short-term rent it. And the problem is there's an impression in town that short-term rentals disrupt neighborhoods.
Mhm.
And if that's the, and there's not a whole lot of disruption, but it'd be good to get a statistic on that, but,
It's not often. Well, we are still in the middle of public comment. So if we want to close public comment, then we can come back to staff feedback.
okay, that's fine. Okay, so we've heard you, and I feel like we need to see if there's anyone else that wants to speak to this.
One more thing is I just think that having a short-term rental unit is much preferred over a vacant second home. And I can tell you, based on all the units I manage, they would all be vacant second homes if they had to follow this.
Okay,
this.
we heard, yeah.
Thank you.
Stick around. Is there any other comment on this issue?
We do have
Cindy,
some folks, we do have some folks on Zoom. If there's no one else in person, I can go ahead and open it up to our Zoom participants. I'll go ahead and he might be reflecting some of the same comments, but I have Tom Sullivan. So we'll start with Tom, and then I'll move down the list here.
Hi, Tom Sullivan, 116 Nelson Avenue. I echo what my daughter said, and I think that this amendment is misguided. I'm gathering that they think the two homes, the one I built at the end of Boulder and the other one I built on the old Lucero's property, are the two homes that you're speaking about, where they went from owning the land for a couple of years and going through the 2 or 3 year building process and then turning it right into a short-term rental. Now, is that correct? Are those the homes that you guys think that went through a loophole?
So Boulder, right?
One's a, well, anyway, I think they are, but because I don't think any other homes have come on that have been turned into short-term rentals. But both those homes are over $2 million to build. So in that instance, these people would then have to, one lives in New York and the other lives in Chicago. They'd have to move here for 2 years before they could rent it out. So then the house just sits vacant. I don't think these are people who care about Minturn. They want to rent their houses out. I don't think they're trying to jump through a loophole to get that done. I think they're trying to contribute. And I think it's misguided to think that you're going to create employee housing by forcing these guys to rent their home, their $2 or $3 or $4 million home long-term to people. I think that we're shooting ourselves in the foot. I think it's a mistake. But do you really think that these guys would have said, "Oh, I'll rent this out for $4,000 or $5,000 a month and not use it myself after I've spent $2 or $3 million building it"? It doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. I think that if you really require people to make it their primary residence, you're going to have a lot of vacant second homes in town. And, we want heads in beds. We want the lights on. I mean, nothing is worse than having a ghost town. And whether we like it or not, when average home cost is 1.5 million and north, they're going to be second homes. I mean, that's just the way it rolls. What working class person can afford a $1.5 million home? That's like a $8,000 a month mortgage. So I think this is misguided. I hope you reconsider it. And thanks for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, any other comment out there?
Yes, one moment. Let's, Bob Anderson. Bob, do you want to speak? I'll give Bob an opportunity here.
Go ahead.
Bob.
Please give your name and address, please.
Yeah, Bob Anderson. I'm actually Kelly's brother and owner of the 3 properties he mentioned. Yeah, what I wanted to say is really to echo a lot of what Tom and Jessica said, and to a degree, my brother as well. I mean, I am an ambassador, I promise you, for Minturn. I rent my house on short-term rental to supplement the income, the expense of the property, but we do live there 2 to 4 months a year, and we plan on one day being there 6 to 8 months a year. I mean, I rent to so many people who I would say a third to a half of the people are begging me to buy my house because they love Minturn and they want to come there because they got exposed to it through the short-term rental. I mean, I have so many friends as well who come to town and they know more people than I do. I mean, they go and hang out at Magusto's for 6 hours. My brother's a big fan there, and he'll show them around. And everybody that rents from me, you could see the reviews on my website. They rave about Minturn, and they want to tell their friends, and they want to come back. That is bringing money to the community, and I'm all about the community getting better because I love it. I spend almost every summer there, and I plan on spending even more. I want to build an even bigger house. And what I want to do is just continue to live there. I can't live there full time because I still have kids in school down in Louisiana, but I want to live there. I want to live there every minute I'm not in Louisiana, to be honest. But I also want to, supplement all the expenses. And what I don't understand is what I saw when y'all initially started about these ordinances. What it seemed to say is that people were getting around this 2-year occupancy by saying they were building for 2 years. Personally, I understand what you're saying, but I don't have as much a problem if you want to make me have a house sit for 2 years. But from the day I have occupancy is what it should be at the very worst. Not that I have to live there because I can't live there full time. I mean, I won't ever be able to live there, and I'll have another big house that's vacant. And all these people that come all the time, I can't tell you how many reviews I get, how much they love the place. I mean, we are a walking advertisement for Minturn, and we want to be. I mean, I hope to one day be on the council, when I retire and get there. So I'm all pro Minturn, but I think it's kind of short-sighted to cut off to make it so that I would have to live there full time if I build another house on my property that I've owned for 12 years. If I build another house on there, which seems to be the Minturn way to build multiple properties on one lot, I'm trying to do it in a very tactful fashion, but it's because I want to be there more. I want to bring more of my family there. And I think it's just, short-sighted to say, nope, nobody can do that, and you have to live there for 2 years because nobody will be able to do that. Saying you have to own it for 2 years, maybe, that's a happy medium, but certainly not having to live there for 2 years. And otherwise, I really don't see how this solves any problems which y'all are recommending. I think the people that advocate for short-term rentals, we're all about Minturn. We're not trying to take anything from Minturn. We're paying more taxes every year, and we love it. And I don't want more restrictions. I want to be able to bring more people there, not tell people you can't come for 2 years.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your input. Put your 5 minutes is up. So let's move on. Is there anyone else that wishes to make any comment on this issue?
I do have one more Zoom participant. I have Larry Stone here. So Larry, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you, Larry Stone, 156 Main Street and 152 Main Street, where Helen's house is. So I'm concerned about the changes to this ordinance for my own.
What's your name and what's your name?
Oh, I stated it. Larry Stone,
Oh,
152
okay.
Main Street, 156 Main Street.
Go ahead, Larry.
My grandmother called me Beaver, but let's not do that.
Putting that on the record.
So here's my concern. I don't want to repeat everything that Jessica, Tom, Kelly, and Kelly's brother said. What they're saying is right in every aspect. I believe they're ambassadors because it's easy to be an ambassador for Minturn, and I've been that for many, many people. What concerns me, you guys, is that we haven't really done a full assessment and study of the sales tax revenue that guests provide for our town in relation to short-term rentals. And I think if we were to quantify it out, we would see that it is a vital part to our economy. And when I look here at across the street and I see two empty houses across the street, I look down the road on the other side of Hawkeye and I see two more empty houses. We don't want any more empty properties. And what Eric had said on the last meeting, we want to see the lights on. And we're repeating what a lot of people are saying. Spence had said it during the last meeting too. We have an ordinance that works. And so I believe that we really need to pay attention to the economics of and the value behind short-term rental. And I think, Brian, you're smarter than I am, but I think that we're riding on top of a belief that short-term rental is a part of the problem of homeownership and the affordability. And I don't think that it is. And we're hearing these concerns from bigger communities, but Minturn doesn't have a lot of means by which to generate sales tax. And quite frankly, those businesses who are sales tax generating people and businesses, it's not easy. You go around and look in some of the restaurants and they're not full. And Earl remembers back in the day when our restaurants were packed. And it's not that way today. And having these heads and beds, as we've been talking about, is a big, important part to our economy. We are sandwiched between two world-class ski resorts. We are a tourist economy. And I used to argue with Fred Hasley that he thought we were a blue-collar town. I'm like, well, we may be blue-collar workers, but the economy's about tourism. And we need lodging. We don't have any big hotels here. And we rely on these people coming into town. So that's about all I've got. I wish we would leave the ordinance the way it is, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, so good points have been made. Anyway, is there anybody else out there, Cindy? Good night.
No, I think we've heard from everyone.
Hi, Mark Tamburino, 381 Black Bear Gypsum, property owner at 474 Main Street. I think, just like Larry said, I feel like the short-term rental situation is a huge asset to our town. Heads and beds also put meals on plates. These people are not buying groceries to cook in these houses. They're coming to our restaurants. And I see it firsthand from the property located behind me, next door, over by Earl's short term. We get a good customer base from all of these Airbnbs. I think what you guys have already established is working. I don't think it should be messed with. I really like the situation of making the home or the property owner invest 2 years in our community and get a feel of it before they can rent it out. I'm not saying that they should have to live there. I think that's really tough in this kind of resort climate for second homeowners, but it definitely lets them get the feel of our community before they start cashing in on the community, so to speak. Otherwise, great work lately with all the snowfall. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else? Cindy?
I don't see anyone else on the Zoom with their hand raised.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. and have discussion. Any thoughts on- I think, let me get started. No one's gonna say anything. Quite frankly, they make good points. It kind of hits home because at the Colorado Association of Ski Towns meeting last week, they published their usual report, sales tax returns for all of their members. I believe they have around 30 to 40 ski towns that are part of the association. Minturn was last in sales tax out of all those ski towns. And Blue River was second to the last, and they were only about 50,000 more than us, 60,000 more than us. But that said, the rest started at 8 million and went up from there. So that's something to think about. And a lot of those towns had less of a population than we did. A lot of them. So I think the points made make a little bit of sense, but I want to put that factor in front of you because we're doing a lot on a little bit of money. Everybody else is making as much as 8 to 20 times as much. So just that's my thought.
Are you suggesting they're making that because they have quite a few more short-term rentals than we do? I'm not quite following your logic here.
Well, what I'm saying is that we've always not grown our business community very much. The point's being made here. They create lodging tax and they create sales tax. It's good for our businesses. I've been saying that for years. It doesn't get very far, it seems, but with that spreadsheet, I'll get that to you, that I saw, really hit me home. We're behind the 8 ball as far as generating revenue for our town. So what I'm saying is that let's listen to this and think about it. And I don't know that, quite frankly, I'm a little leaning toward continuing right now. And so we can get the rest of the council together and have a work session or something. That said, I want to listen to staff and see where they're at.
I was looking to mention just from the perspective that the council had inquired about complaints that might have arisen. And I have spoken with Cindy on this matter, and I will say that although, we get, the handful of complaints a year, I think Cindy would say that they are minimal complaints from an overall perspective for impact to the town.
Okay. Scott, might hit your brain with this. You're on planner. You know what's going on.
Actually, I don't. This is certainly something that we care about from a zoning and use table standpoint, but it's really also something that I personally, as your town planner, have not gotten involved in. It really is something that Cindy heads up, and I also, as you know, take part in housing task force in the Valley and care very much and talk a lot about affordable housing. There are different opinions and different studies that weigh in on the impact of short-term rental on affordable housing. Some of the arguments that I've heard tonight are valid points. When you look at the size and perhaps the cost of a home that folks are building in some of our communities, there is a valid question to be asked. Is that really going to be a local living there? Is that taking away from locals' housing? I don't know the answer to that, but it's a good question to ask. In relation to the town's goals for a short-term rental program, you do have a cap. It is not even close to being exceeded. So I think I've heard some comments that it's working. I think I would agree with that. So I hesitate to say too much more because I'm not directly involved in this program for the town, but.
Okay. Mike, do you have anything? Michelle?
I can just say that Mike and I were both here when the ordinance was originally put into place with the 2-year cap. with the goal of minimizing speculation. I think that's fair to say. Since that time, as you've seen, we have not reached the cap. I have been in many meetings throughout Eagle County and the region regarding how can we address our long-term housing issues. And in those meetings, we've identified that the long-term housing issues are not going to be solved by a handful of short-term rentals switching from short-term to long-term, especially in the situations that some of the folks here tonight have discussed, whereby these are incredibly expensive homes that most likely the owners would prefer sit empty versus renting in a long-term capacity. Short-term, long-term housing solutions will come from a lot of the projects that you're seeing Avon and Vail trying to do on a larger scale, or like Brian Rodin has identified with building code adjustments to allow for more natural approaches to this. But it's probably not going to come from changing 15 short-term rentals. I'm sorry that might be very blunt.
No, that's a much needed perspective. So thank you.
We fire you.
You're not going to fire me.
Earl, can I make a comment on it?
Yes, please.
Actually, when we were looking at this 2 weeks ago, it sounded great. I mean, we were trying to do was get people to have their lights on, people living in their homes. We looked at the community survey. The response was, we need to look at minimizing short-term rentals. After hearing what I heard tonight, I'm in favor of making a motion just to deny this and stick with what we have, because I feel with what we have works. We heard it 2 weeks ago from Spence Neubauer that why do we want to change it when it's working? I feel our cap at 50 limits us. We can't go over that. And if a lot of houses are being built, we might hit the cap sooner than later. But I feel that we should just stick with what we have. And if you'd like, I'd like to make a motion to not approve this.
May I interject quickly?
Okay.
And that is that this ordinance addressed 2 points. The testimony here has been about the second point about renting or having a short-term rental of the entire property. The other item that was discussed that is incorporated into this ordinance is how should the 2-year ownership requirement be enforced if you want to do a portion of your property? Before denying the ordinance in totality, I would at least encourage you to discuss that.
I see what you're talking about. The 33.
Because there is merit for folks who perhaps could not otherwise afford to purchase a home in Minturn, but with that supplemental income of a part-time short-term rental in part of their home, they may be able to be local homeowners living there directly.
So we can make the motion to deny this, but then have a new ordinance brought in front of us with 33%. Could we do it that route?
I think the ordinance for call it the partial short-term rental option is actually all in that document. You could simply say, strip out everything that.
Except for that.
Except for that, yeah.
Okay.
I would just chime in to say, irrespective of your views on short-term rentals, the people who are here who are most financially tied to short-term rentals are having trouble understanding exactly what this ordinance is about, and they're the most engaged. So I think that's just a sign that maybe we're not quite there, and I would say either stay or continue it or whatever. Secondly, I don't want to repeat myself, but yeah, Michelle got to the point. I think zeroing in on the 2-year residential versus somebody living there versus whatever is so cart before the horse when it comes to updating this. I think ordinances around short-term measures are a small part of a much larger suite of policies a town can have around a goal of, we have 80% occupancy kind of is emerged a little bit, right? We're a lucky town. I think the 2-year thing played into that, but we have around 70 to 80% of our homes are occupied year-round, according to the best numbers I've seen. So I think, short-term rental policy, updating housing codes to allow for, higher and more dense use. There's all sorts of things, commercial affordability programs, I mean, there are just so many suites of policies and approaches you can do to kind of put together a comprehensive and then work toward a goal instead of just kind of like piecemealing and saying, let's update the 2 year and then in a while this. So I don't think we've gotten there yet as a community, and I would encourage that we try to get there. And that was my original take, but yeah, so that's why when this came up, I was kind of like, it seems like we're kind of tweaking stuff that it seems like we don't have our ducks in a line yet on this comprehensive policy and trying to figure out where we want to be in the next 5 years, 10 years, and try to design suite of policies to get there. I'd be in favor of moving this down and discussing later.
Okay, so, and quite frankly, that's why we do the processes we do. I mean, I learn a lot from folks that come in here, and I wish we had more of them coming in all the time. Anyway, is there any further discussion? Because there's, if not, do we have a motion?
Mike, procedurally, if we decide to continue, do we have to pick a date?
Yeah, you would pick a date in March or something like that, and we can, the next meeting, whatever you like, you just would continue, because this is, we haven't noticed that, or we haven't published this yet, have we? Yeah, so I guess for all intents and purposes, if you just wanted to say, let's have another discussion session at some point in the future, we can do that. We haven't published the ordinance yet, so it doesn't really hinder us from bringing this back in front of you at a future date.
Thanks.
So I believe we still need a motion, right?
I'll make a motion to deny ordinance number 3, series 2025, an ordinance of the town of Minturn amending sections 6-7-20 and 6-7-40 of the Minturn Municipal Code, establishing ownership and occupancy requirements for the approval of short-term rental licenses, except for the section, let's see, it's under 670-40, item number 1.
Do we have a second?
Does it need to be item 1 and 2?
I'm sorry?
Did we read that correctly, Mike?
Does it need to be 2, the way it's stated? Because that says you gotta, if you have anything over 33%, you gotta live in it for 2 years, which we do anyway.
Right, that's the only thing we need to leave in, right?
We just need item 1.
Yeah, I think it's just 1.
Okay.
So do we have a second?
So to clarify, the outcome is that we would have an ordinance that when you immediately buy a property, you could then rent out a bedroom to help pay for that property.
As long as it's not over
Up to
33%.
33%.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'm seconding that. Mike doesn't seem.
May I suggest perhaps an alternative to this?
Okay.
Why, yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
My recommendation would be a motion to approve the ordinance with amendment to remove everything except subsection 1.
All right, I'll redo that. Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 3, series 2025, an ordinance of the town of Minturn amending sections 6-7-20 and 6-7-40 of the Minturn Municipal Code, establishing ownership and occupancy requirements for the approval of a short-term rental license, striking everything except, let me get back to it here, 6-70-4, section 1.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Gusty, a second by Brian. This is an ordinance, so roll call, please.
Kate, aye.
Brian.
Gusty, aye.
Eric, aye.
And Arlen. Good job, Gusty. Okay.
Double to the grill is all right.
That's a good process. I like that. Okay. Next we have, let's see, where are we? Okay, we are on Discussion, item, Minton Bike Park, proposed future projects.
He's waited a long time for this.
Oh, he just got here.
Good evening, everybody. I think I'm here on behalf of the Bill Valley Mountain Trails Alliance, and I think our executive director Ernest is on the call, and he wanted to introduce us on his behalf. So,
could you state your name, please?
My name is Sam Chipkin. I'm a representative of Bill Valley Mountain Trails Alliance, also Minturn Town resident, 432 Taylor Street.
Perfect.
Taylor Street.
All right. So, you gonna give us a presentation?
Yeah. Cindy is Ernest there? Does he want to introduce?
Yep, I'm just been being let into the virtual world. So I think you all should be able to hear me now, correct?
Yeah. Yes, you're good.
Hi all, good to see you. Ernest Sager, Executive Director of the VVMTA. Apologize I couldn't be there in person tonight, but you were in good hands there with Sammy from our team. Want to first just say hello and thank you for the support that you provided for the Minturn Bike Park the town has over the last 4 or 5 years. It's kind of crazy to think that we're entering what will end up being our 5th full year here, coming into the season of the bike park. It's been a huge success, a great asset for the community of Minturn and the greater community. And we've seen a lot of use, a lot of changes, and we're here to look at some improvements that will help bring it into the future, move it into the future for continued sustainability and excitement and attraction and serving the community. So we hope that we see more people out there year after year. I think over these 4 or 5 years, we've seen around 25,000 rides on average every year out there, which is pretty impressive. So with that, just wanted to say thanks, and I'll turn it over to Sammy. You're in good hands. Fun fact, he actually helped build the bike park before he was part of the VVMTA as a volunteer and part of the crew that built it. So he knows his things out there.
Thank you.
And Sammy, can I add a couple things?
Absolutely.
So just real quickly, I wanted to remind the council that this was brought up during the budget season. The council tentatively approved funds because as Minturn knows, we want to continually be investing in our assets. But the council came back to staff and said, hey, let's take some time. Let's take a deeper dive at some of the improvements that can be made. And then let's go through the full public process on what the community wants to see have happen. And if there's volunteer support for any particular direction the community would like to go. And so Sammy and Ernest said absolutely. They came back with this great presentation tonight to talk a little bit more about the opportunities at the bike park so we can start having that greater global community discussion. So this is the starting point of that. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Thanks, Michelle. And thank you for the impetus was kind of driven. So we appreciate it. So jumping right in, if we can just flip to the next slide here, kind of starting with kind of why we're here in the first place, why improve the Minturn Bike Park. And just these first few pictures here kind of paint a little bit of a picture of sometimes what we're seeing out there with beginner level mountain bikers being kind of set out to learn how to ride in the parking lot, with that being kind of the most beginner part of the whole bike park. If you flip to the next one there, Cindy, if it is Cindy driving. And so here's another example. This is going on out at Malloy Park in the summertime. This is essentially a user-generated skills area, which kind of shows the desire for this sort of thing. And we would love to take this enthusiasm and put this into a more safer, more designed, and more permanent option in a place where it makes more sense at the Minturn Bike Park. Next one, Cindy. So this is kind of a little bit of an example of what we'd like to see instead of those first few slides that I showed you. So these are some pictures that are taken at the Eagle Bike Park at the newly built skill zone that was completed last year. And this just kind of gives some examples of what a skill zone could look like.
a designated area for all ages and abilities to practice and build skills, which takes place where it probably belongs, at the bike park in Minturn. You can head over to the next one. So jumping over, this is kind of a two-pronged approach that we're looking to take here, with the skill zone being the first and dirt jumps being the second. And what we're seeing now here, these are some pictures of the jumps currently as they stand. They haven't really undergone any kind of transformation or updates since the park was completed, as you understand, 5 years ago, which feels like that flew by. And yeah, some of that is my work, which I'm proud of, but would love to see some updates too. So you can flip to the next one. So here's a little bit of an example of what we'd like to see a little more of. This is vastly different from what you saw in those last two pictures. This is a little bit harder to quantify than the skills zone benefits. But what we want to see in the dirt jumps is this idea of kind of progression and creativity, and it's the sort of thing that keeps people coming back again and again. Where you can take a different line through the jumps each time you go, and this is kind of like a living, breathing thing. Like all bike parks change over time, they evolve, and we haven't quite reached that stage yet. And I think we'd love to take that step. So you can hit the next one. So just I don't know how deep we want to go into this, but if any of y'all would like a little bit of a for anybody who's not familiar with what the current status of the bike park is, I'd be happy to go into this. You'll have it in the packet if you want to delve into it a little bit more. Unless anybody wants any specifics.
Yeah, please do. Go delve.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just is it all right if I microphone? So
take the mic with you, would you?
So this is kind of a zoomed out aerial photo here. Starting, I'll just go down the line. I guess to give you a little bit of context first, this is Cemetery Road that goes out towards the gun range. These are the landscape yards right here. This is the outside of the concrete plant. Starting with number one is the dual slalom track, which kind of reaches to the furthest limits of the bike park, which we've been fortunate enough to host the GoPro Mountain Games for the last 3 years, and we'll do so again this spring, early summer. So that's been a huge asset. Number two over here, which parallels the dual slalom track, is named Lovable Outlaw, and that is a slope style jump trail. Large size jumps intended for mountain bikes, as opposed to the dirt jumps, which I'll get into in a sec. Number three, you all might be more familiar with. That's the Mini Mile, which connects over from the southern end of the bike park over towards the northern end. Number four is kind of the advanced downhill flow trails. This is actually kind of one trail with an alternate line, a little bit more technical alternate line. Number five over here is kind of similar sort of thing, but is geared towards slightly more beginner intermediate riders. Number six is the pump track, which town approved some investment in 2 years ago, which is a huge success. Number seven entails the whole dirt jump zone, which is comprised of 4 different dirt jump lines, varying in difficulty from expert to very beginner. Number 8, we'll go into here in a little bit. That was designed as a kid's pump track, and is certainly the most underutilized part of the park, which is the area that we're hoping to develop a little bit further. 9 is the parking lot, and lastly 10 is the pavilion and the shade structure, which is probably the most utilized part of the bike park. So yeah, I hope that gives a little bit of a background. So going into a little bit of what we've heard from the community in regards to the skills area, we've heard town of Minturn residents taking their kids down to the newly built Eagle Bike Park to utilize the skill zone down there. And that's awesome. We built the Eagle Bike Park. I'm proud of it. But we'd love to see town of Minturn residents having that amenity here in town, so they can stay here and be more part of the community here. Additionally, local programs, nonprofits such as the Cycle Effect, Exploremos, countless times have let us know how valuable they find these types of assets for teaching new entry-level mountain bike riders. And in regards to the dirt jumps, you know, we host the Jump Jam at the GoPro Mountain Games. We host an additional fall Jump Jam. I'm out there for all those events, in addition to our Rake and Ride events, the volunteer events that we hold monthly. And I'm consistently getting chewed in my ear about updates to the jumps. Advanced riders looking for opportunities for progression. They want to see more, and they want to see evolution. And I'd love to be able to give it to them. So if you can jump to the next one. So digging in a little bit more in the skill zone, we don't have to go into this video, but at your leisure if you want to. This is a nice little video, kind of just to give you an idea for those who don't know what a little bit more about what a skill zone could look like. And we'll go into that a little bit next on this next slide. You can jump to the next one. So I guess these pictures come out pretty small when you're sitting far away, but essentially the gist is what you would see there. It's kind of a mix of some wooden features and some natural rock features that would give beginner riders, intermediate riders, advanced riders all opportunities to build skills and progress, and then ideally take those skills out to the local trails that all funnel down here into Minturn, which we're fortunate to have many of. You can go to the next one. So a little bit of logistics here. We have kind of two options for a location. In talking through this a little more in depth, we've kind of honed in on the option one there, so I'm just going to focus on that. This is a zoomed in version of that photo that we were just going through earlier, and what you're seeing here with that red polygon that says skills area option one, that's the far end of the parking lot, kind of the north end of the parking lot. That's where our shed is located. It's kind of the bottom of the dirt jumps. It's also where the kids pump track currently exists. So what we'd be looking to do is move the shed, move a couple of trees, and do a little bit of site prep and kind of repurpose that area to maximize the value of that space. And you can jump to the next one. So getting this done, over the last couple of years, VVMTA's amassed a pretty significant amount of experience in bike park building, and we can utilize that experience to maximize efficiency. We can cut down on labor costs by utilizing VVMTA's large volunteer base. We can utilize Town of Minturn and VVMTA owned equipment to save significant costs on machinery rentals. There's also potential opportunities for new sponsorships to add to additional revenue to boost the project. You can jump to the next one. So skill zone costs. You know, we have some pretty recent data to be able to inform what I believe is a pretty accurate cost estimate of what we can do this for, which comes in just under $40,000, $39,350. And this includes all of the major items such as grading, site prep, features, labor, and including an additional shade structure, which is something that we think would be of great value. And you know, for as far as investments in a town goes, I think this is a fraction of the number of other investments for a pretty high value in return. So yeah, you can jump to the next one. And you can actually skip 2 ahead, yeah. So digging into the dirt jumps a little bit, no pun intended there. Couple more pictures here of kind of what we would like to see a little bit more of, and this may look pretty foreign to somebody who's not familiar, but kind of what's going on here is these crisscrossing lines that allow for multiple options and creativity. And you can jump ahead. So in terms of economic value, what does this bring to the town of Minturn? Kind of the main one that I'd like to focus on here is at the bottom there, this concept of this Colorado dirt jump loop, which I'm coining this phrase. There's been a huge rise in these bike parks across the state, and what's kind of organically happened here is between the Front Range, Summit County, also in Eagle County, but Elgibel, Frisco, and now Eagle. We've kind of naturally created this loop, this like dirt jump loop of public parks, and I think that Minturn absolutely deserves a place in that loop, and I think there's potential for legitimate revenue to come from people visiting to partake. So you can jump to the next one. So again, what does this take to get this done? VVMTA has received a bid from a company called the Jump Doctors, and they're based here in Colorado, and this is their sole purpose, is to come in and make renovations, updates to public jump parks. They focus on maintenance and updates. We've worked with them at the Eagle Bike Park. We also contracted with them to help out with the dual slalom track, and we've had a great experience thus far. I'd be thrilled to work with them again. So you can jump forward. Costs for dirt jumps. Our bid from Jump Doctors came in at just shy of $25,000, and what that would get us would be their full team to come to Minturn for about a week in the spring, and or whenever our timeline allows, and make some modifications and updates to the jumps. You can skip forward. So kind of hitting on Michelle's community engagement, which we think is super valuable. Everything that I've presented thus far is what we've heard anecdotally from the public, just from being out there. But we want to make certain that what we're going forward with and what we're doing is exactly what the community wants, because it's a community asset. So what we kind of have outlined here is a little bit of a timeline, starting with a survey that we'd like to put out essentially immediately if we were to move forward. Get survey results back, create a concept design of the skills zone and the dirt jumps based on those results. Then host an open house, which we think would be awesome to hold in conjunction with the opening day of the bike park, to kind of have a little bit of a celebration sort of thing out there, and get a little bit more feedback from that, and then release a final draft for review and approval, and then start digging. Yeah, just to make sure that we're headed in the right direction. So I'm sure you can't read that from where you're seated, but this is just a sample survey draft with some example questions of the sorts of things that we'd be asking for feedback on in regards to what kind of features do you want to see at the bike park? How does your family use the bike park? Generally the direction that we'd want to go. So I think our next slide is the last. Just want to echo Ernest's sentiment in thanking y'all for your continued support, and it's been an honor on my behalf to be able to manage this town asset, and I'm looking forward to continuing to do so. So thank y'all.
Is that you on that last slide?
That is actually me. Yeah, that is me.
That was a good presentation. That's pretty exciting, actually. Yeah. So, as far as the amount of donations that would be applied to this?
Yeah. So there's opportunity for the skills area in particular. Mm-hmm. A lot of those features can be made out of natural materials, even like excess construction materials. Mm-hmm. So there's opportunity for donations in that regard.
And it sounded like you might be able to get the dirt jumps done before GoPro.
Potentially, that would be a quick timeline, but it's not out of the question, and it would be that would be pretty awesome to have those for the junk jam. It's tricky with the schedule with the water. And there's nothing we can do to speed that up, but yeah.
Okay, just thought.
Okay. I would like to let you talk too, but spending a lot of time out there with Jasper, who's 5.5 now, and has been on a strider since she was 1.5, and the other one is close to 1. Yeah, I mean, like we spend a lot of time out there, and it is constantly packed with like families having birthday parties for their kids because it's like a very cheap thing just to go out there and have, bring some pizzas or do whatever, and the kids are running around. And it's been we do go to Eagle. Because she does love, just the something about being on the little logs, like just triggers something in them that's like, oh, this is fun, So I think it is important to build some more of those real kid-friendly features, because then they'll end up jumping like you someday, and just kind of keeping, and I think it also really is cool. I do see kids in the community riding over there. High schoolers, middle schoolers and stuff, and like anything that we can do as a community to have like safe, fun, like, places to hang out, after school and things like that is like really important. And compared to the costs of swimming pools and other things, like this seems like a pretty good investment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, to echo what Brian's saying there, like I've got a 3-year-old who, honestly, he started talking about your guys' idea of looking at Zone 1 for the skills area. I could not get my kid to go on the little kid pump track. He immediately wanted to go on the big pump track because that's where all the big kids were going. And honestly, like I couldn't, once he's in there, I can't get him out. Like every day I have to drag him kicking and screaming to come home. So definitely, I think that's a great place to target for that. One thing I would love to see, and this is maybe we have to look at like the logistics of this, but somehow find a way to get food trucks out there for GoPro events and other weekends or whatever, because that is, we get a lot of people, like Brian said, that will come out, and I mean, there's I was there probably 4 or 5 days a week this summer with my son, and we've seen people come from Mexico, I mean, all over the place that are coming out to visit and are using that facility. So it's a phenomenal asset, definitely worth the investment, I believe, and let's keep it going.
I don't have children, but I probably ride the same size features as both Brian and Eric's children. And that's great because there's not a lot of places to go if you're terrified of your mountain bike but still want to do it anyway.
Okay.
So this is a discussion direction item. So we brought this back to the council for your consideration of the concept to move forward with the outline that Sammy has provided with getting community survey feedback, providing an open house to get together an additional form of input, potentially at the opening, depending on what that looks like timing wise, to then understand how best the community wants to move forward. As you will all remember, the council approved $30,000 in the budget for 2025. And so, we look to our experts of Sammy and Ernest at VVMTA on how best we can spend those funds in addition to what we hope would be a pretty great grassroots effort of volunteers as well to hopefully spread those dollars even further if possible. So we look for council's direction if what Sammy and Ernest have presented to you today is in line with what the council wants to see moving forward for gathering community feedback.
I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, it's night and day. It's amazing. Good job with the look of everything.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Sammy, thank you so much for putting that together.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. Thanks very much for having us. Thanks for being patient.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Ernest. It's been great working with you, Ernest.
You too, Michelle. Miss you.
Bye.
Parking Ray next. Okay.
So I'm actually emailing Cindy right now, seeing if the hot dog truck guy will go out in the afternoons before he goes back to the weed ram in the evenings.
Yeah, he probably love that too.
Somebody get an ice cream truck. What would be better than mountain bikes and ice cream?
Right?
Adults or children.
I would be broke.
Yeah. Earl's sales tax dollar signs are just going out of his head right now. It's all on ice cream.
Get that shopping hop to do it out of there. Patio.
Yeah, right.
Okay, future agenda items. We have golf carts. And what else? Any other, more suggestions?
Yes.
If we want to do the,
Paving, Nelson?
since we talked about short-term rental, maybe do a workshop or something on that?
So if you all want to do a workshop, what would probably be ideal would be to have the bigger holistic discussion about policy related to long-term housing. Now I know Scott Hunn is going to be working on that as part of his Minturn Forward project, so we can probably coordinate that scheduling together.
To do it together, yeah.
Yes,
Makes sense.
and he'll be bringing that forward. An additional item would be the Nelson William Street corridor and how we can hopefully try to address traffic flow. This is one of those wicked ones where the last time we had a traffic engineer come out and take a look at this, their recommendation was to literally tear down a couple of the houses for a second outlet for cars to get out. And I said, people are living in those homes.
It is a very narrow street.
It's a real narrow street in both directions. We've already asked CDOT if we can change the direction of Williams to go out onto Main Street. CDOT said no, because we don't have the proper lines of sight. Although we have Brian Rodine on our team now, and he doesn't take no for an answer. So, yeah.
I'll argue with CDOT any day.
Very few people could argue with CDOT. I say anything's open, but that's a discussion that we certainly need to have along with the heat exchange project and repaving. So I have emailed staff asking if that discussion can take place with council in April.
All right. That's the only thing, one thing left.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion by Kate, second by, is that Eric?
Eric got it, yeah.
Brian, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.